Okay, everybody, I have 4 completely empty SD cards. That just fell in blueberries. Blueberries to keep me energized, water to keep me going, a mysterious clickbaity artifact I'll open at a random point in the video, a whiteboard, 2 backup batteries, and a whole lot of energy. It's time to begin the recording of quite possibly my most ambitious recording day ever, summarizing the entirety of Rhythm of War chapter by chapter. Yes, well over 100 of them. But before we go ahead and get into that, I would just like to say right now we are doing a end of the year merch drop where all of our bestsellers are available for you to pick up for 10% off. That includes the Struggler hoodie, the Give Women Swords tee, and the TBR Rising from the Grave Reader shirt. So if you'd like to pick up anything you missed, just go to danielbgreen.com. But now, into the video. Rhythm of War begins as many a book does with a prologue from the perspective of Navani, who gets into an argument with Gavalar because she feels like he is not involved with a feast that's meant for him. She ends up eavesdropping on him talking to 2 people, a Makabaki and a Vorin, and there are these strange sphericals that are between them, which she assumes are 4 Fabrials. But Gavalar ends up pulling Navani aside and they get into a big old fight where he accuses her of only marrying her for status and position and really loving Dalinar, which is setting up more stuff for Navani later on. They also fight about Yasna's refusal to court Amaram, which if at this point in the series we know is just never gonna be a thing.
He's dead.
And when all is said and done, Navani ends up burning a glyph ward, think of kind of just like a prayer in general, that says death, gift, death. And we cut to after the feast, which takes place after the prologue of Way of Kings, if I remember correctly. And that is right, Gavalar is now dead, successfully assassinated, and Navani feels terrible about this. She goes and checks his body, feeling just so much pity for this man who thought he would be immortal, but now he is laying deceased before her. But she remembers the mysterious sphere, checks his pocket, guess what be missing? Ta-da! And that is the end of Rhythm of War's prologue. Chapter 1 picks up in the modern day, and we are following the perspective of Lirin, as you may know, Kaladin's papa, because Hearthstone is Kaladin's hometown, where he doth hail from. And this is really a time that emphasizes the horrors of war, as we are getting into refugees, plague, and, of course, surgery, which is interrupted as we are seeing that, like, while Lirin wants to perform on certain things, and he's setting up other stuff, someone arrives and goes, hey, this Fused is here, and they're looking for a spy. Fused being like a grr. And emphasizing like all of this chaos even more, he wants to be doing certain surgeries, but he can't because someone who is like higher class demands that the surgeon attend her. Classism going on. But a Fused arrives and claims they are looking for a spy. Who could it be? Someone with a brand, a scar on their forehead. Well, of course, that leads to the reveal of Kaladin's Stormblast, which takes us nicely to chapter 2. Yeah, chapter 1's just basically setting up like war is awful and cool entrance for Kaladin. If I didn't make it clear enough, the Fused bad. He's arriving at a place where it's like refugees and not soldiers being like, grr, we're invading bad guys because Fused are like a super type. You understand, you've read the first 3 books.
Or maybe not.
And so Kaladin, we pick up with his POV in chapter 2, challenges the Fused to a fight. And they immediately have a glorious combat where Kaladin's powers are not only on full display from the last book, but clearly refined and practiced. But this Fused is a bit different. That's horrible, but whatever. Because Kaladin obviously shoots up into the sky and the Fused chase after him, but he's able to leave his form and like teleport to fight Kaladin at distances while Kaladin is kind of more just flying like Superman, but like with also a Spider-Man element to it. Don't worry about it. Basically, the Fused is able to reform its body using void light, which is a concept we will talk about a lot later. But the fight is pretty intense, and Kaladin ends up like getting hit in the spine and the throat, showing that this Fused is aware of how to take out someone with the special abilities of Kaladin. But fortunately, Kaladin has his like super duper healing now, and he's able to like overcome the guy and destroy his body multiple times. And on the 3rd time, that Fused is like, okay, I've died enough, let's leave. But the most important part is we get the beginning of a running theme with Kaladin in this book, and that is Time for some super sad boy time, because he tells Syl, like, I'm so tired, I feel useless, this war is going on forever, oh my god. And even says, like, Syl, your plan before I got there should have been doing that. And this is gonna evolve a lot for Kaladin throughout this book. But this be a multi-POV chapter, and so we jump on over to the POV of Shallan. She is doing her identity thing and currently posing as Vale, who, oh wait, I did that, I dyslexia'd that. And posing as Vale, trying to get captured by the secret organization she found out about in the last book, Sons of Anna. But she's like covertly being watched over by Adolin and his people, and you know. It's a trap! But after she goes and gets a few drinks, it turns out that her drink got spiked and she is like falling unconscious. But that does mean her plan is a success. As strange as that sounds to say, that's kind of what she wanted to happen. But like, she's like, yay, I'm being kidnapped by a shady organization that drugged me. Fantastic. But this chapter ain't over though, because then we go back into the Kaladin POV. Amazing. And all of this can really be summed up with more Kaladin sad boy time, but not oversimplifying. Kaladin returns to Hearthstone, engages with some of the guards that have been left, kills one, the rest, and then he tells people in the town, like, hey, we're evacuating. Too much the war has come to screw this place up. Not safe. His dad's like, you're doing violence, which makes me ashamed. And Kaladin's like, stop making my sad boy time worse. And then at the very end of this, Navani arrives with one of her latest inventions, a gargantuan, fantastically awe-inspiring airship. Because, thank you, Sanderson, airships make every fantasy story cooler. I mean, it's described here as a floating platform. Am I misremembering? I thought it was an airship. Floating platform. She arrives in a floating platform. And the main thing to know about this floating platform is Navani worked with a ton of people to be super smart and Navani it, which to me, Navaniing it means like she did some amazing stuff, but she's trying to be like humble about it and like, I just lead smarter people. But leading smarter people is a skill in itself, and Navani is awesome. She's also mourning Elithkar, and this floating platform has been named after Bridge 4 in honor of Kaladin's like super badass homeboys who are like the central awesome crew of the Stormlight Archive up to this point. I think we could all agree on that. Bridge 4 for life. But it sets down in Hearthstone and begins the evacuation, aiding what Kaladin was trying to set up here, and that is all hunky-dory, goody-woody. And Kaladin gets a refill of Stormlight from Dalinar, who is also here. But Mink, the person Kaladin was actually trying to make contact with when he arrived as a spy and wasn't there when Kaladin came back for the evacuation, does reemerge at this time. And he's apparently been like disappearing mysteriously at various stages. But undercutting what I just said, Dalinar welcomes in Mink onto the platform without consulting Navani, bad Dalinar. But just as things are looking chill, Lyn arrives and warns of a full, like, assault on the way of multiple fused, one of which Kaladin struggled with, and they gotta get! And this takes us to the next chapter. Now, I hope you were really curious about what was happening to Shallan when she got drugged, because we pick up with her, and she's in the identity of Radiant as she's being carried with a sack over her head. But when they put her down, Vale takes over once again. And the Sons of Honor try to use fabrials that are fake that she sold them earlier to detect her light weaving, so of course, they don't end up detecting it. She got you.
You are smart as hell, you know that?
Yo, if you want to join our super cool organization, you got to take this oath, which she's okay. And she fakes taking the oath and asks to speak with Layla? Lale. I don't know how we're supposed to pronounce this one. It's been a minute since I did the audiobook. No, you can't speak with our big boy higher up. But in this asking this, she does learn that they do have a spy who happens to be close to Dalinar. Not good. At this point, though, she's like, I'm not who you think I am. What? Because Shallan has taken back over in the mind. The multi-personality thing really does just like whap, 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 whap. happen within Rhythm of War. Let's move on to chapter 6. It's at this point I need to clarify, 1, chapter 5, not chapter 6. We're off to a strong start. And 2, if a chapter like cuts from a POV to another POV back to the first POV, I'm just going to condense them down to 1 unless there's like an extreme reason why not to. But we're going to get back, of course, to Kaladin in the midst of this fight because he's commanding the Windrunners to obviously protect the platform and everything going on there. And he ends up seeing Leshwi, who, if you are knowledgeable in Stormlight, is the person who helped convert Moash to the other side and become a traitor. So there's a big old personal grrr between these two. Now, this does not go well for Kaladin. In fact, he ends up screwing up and just like engaged with another fused who he doesn't end up killing. Back on the platform, he ends up spreading word about this new like ribbon of light travel they're able to do that we saw in the first fuse he fought earlier. And he's like, yo, we need to be prepared for this. And they take up more of a defensive position around Dalinar. At the same time, there's this idea of a prisoner rescue at the manor that needs to happen, and it's actually the Lord's Manor that Kaladin like had so much conflict with growing up, and he like maybe partially blames for his brother's death still, but him and Syl end up like arguing over his attitude towards this whole situation. It's just not a great look for Kaladin, and it's setting up more, you guessed it, sad but times. But this all ends with him seeing Leshwi once again and taking off to fight him. But from here, we're going to cut to Shallan, who now is once again in charge of her own body. That veil has retreated, and she covers her weird statement earlier by being like, I'm someone who sells military secrets. Gives them some like little bits of stuff from her notebook to prove it, but still, we're not going to take you to our leader. And please, no. At this point, though, they're putting a hood back over. Things aren't looking too great, but Adolin's forces are beginning to close in. And now we go to chapter 6. Chapter 6 is maybe the biggest chapter we have taken on yet because we are jumping between 3 different POVs, and we even do one of those double backs we're talking about, where we're going to start with Shallan. Hey, I know there's like all these forces like coming in to arrest you guys. You're going to escape. Take me with you. Take me. I want to come with you. What? Please? So they end up putting a bag over her head, and she is taken with them away from her rescue party. That's dangerous. And what she sees is they end up getting dropped in front of Lele Sadius, which we all know who that is. I'm gonna probably kill this person. I know Dalinar wouldn't condone that, but, you know, Shallan likes to get stuff done. But I think at this point, she's Veil, right? Yes! Nailed it! All right, but from here, we're gonna cut to Kaladin, who is seeing Leshwi fight Sigzil. And that's, like, not a competition for Leshwi. Easily is, like, about to kill him, but Kaladin's like, surrender, give up, and Sigzil does. And because honor, Leshwi lets Sigzil go away and doesn't, like... But then it's like Leshwi versus Kaladin, because Kaladin does the challenge. There's like these continual 1v1 challenges that the Fuse will do. And they end up fighting. It's really intense. Kaladin uses a home field advantage, but they end up stabbing each other at the same time, and both of them are about to die. They pull out, and then there's a scream, and they realize that there's a Fuse just killing civilians. And Leshwi is like, I don't condone that. And Kaladin, can I go handle it? And Leshwi's like, that's fair. We're going to fight again. You stop war crimes. So credit to Leshwi. But now we jump over to Navani, who is now handling the refugees. She sees Renarin trying to entertain kids like with light weaving, and Dalinar is meanwhile opening an evacuation by doing this whole perpendicularity thing, making Shadesmar visible. How confusing is this? If you've never read a single Stormlight book, that's continually in my head. And this next part really won't make sense, but oh no, that's Moash. I guess I'll do my best to explain this if you've not read like the entirety of the Stormlight, but Moash was on the people we like side, but then this Leshwi figure did some chatting, and Moash was like, you got some points, and does a big old betrayal, and now it's a big old meme in the Stormlight Archive fandom that we don't like Moash.
Okay. Cool. No doubt.
Killed some people we care about. We don't like Moash. But this takes us to Chapter 7. Progress! Chapter 7 is another 1-2 Shallan Kaladin punch, and we're going to pick up with Shallan, who is now brought to Lele, and figures out through talking with her that they have access to the Kholin inner circle. Lele Sadius believes that it's the Ghostbloods who have been doing some killing, and she tells Shallan, like, yo, I'm gonna die, I know that to be true, I'm gonna be, like, going back to join my hubby hub. When that happens, get the rarest vintage from my stash, which, you know, kind of obvious there, but alright, we'll take it. After Adolin's people arrive to arrest her and have actually managed to come track Shallan all the way here because of, like, magic stuff, she actually ends up dying anyway from poison. And this leads Shallan to be like, yo, the Ghostbloods gotta have, like, people in my inner circle. That's bad. There is a spy among us. Yeah, you bet your ass I'm gonna play that sound effect right now in the editing. I'm gonna do it like 10 more times. Watch. From here, though, we cut to our boy Kaladin, who is handling the hostage situation that has developed around the civilians that were being butchered by a fused. He handles it, we Gucci, and at this point, Lift arrives to get a Fabrial for Navani to study. Fabrials are really important in this book if you are completely unaware of what they are. Think of them like magic talismans. They use Stormlight to do a specific function, and this one's going to be brought to Navani. Chapter 8! Now, before we get into Chapter 8, I would like to address a question you might be having by this time, which is like, Daniel, why in the world are you going through and doing every single chapter summary? Well, I find it personally a little bit annoying when I go for like a summary of a book I haven't read in a long time before reading the sequel, and the sequel's not out yet, so they kind of like guess what'll be important information in the coming books, and then you read the coming book and something happens that you weren't reminded about in the summary. So my solution to that
is everything.
Chapter 8! This is, once again, a Kaladin-Shallan 1-2 combo. Heavy with that early on, and here we see Kaladin enters the cellar of the manor this hostage situation was at, and bam, guess who's in there? It's Moash, and he is with some dead people, and slits Roshar's throat, and he surrenders to Kaladin, but at the same time, he's like, Kaladin, your mental state is only going to get, like, worse and worse, dude. I killed Roshar for revenge, and you are going to keep seeing people you love die. The only way out is for you to do the thing that will get me demonetized here on YouTube for saying, which, like, Jesus, we hate Moash for good reason. Then this, like, visage appears where Moash is, like, walking into this light and he's radiant and he's like, ha 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 ha, I'm better than you, dude. But then, like, the real Moash, not this illusion, is and like disappears out, so it's like conflicting what's going on with this guy. And to better clarify what's going on here, it's revealed that this illusion was crafted by Renarin, hence his light weaving earlier to set up that he can do this, and that's what caused Moash to flee, which is really great because Kaladin was like frozen in like a battle fatigue state and was not able to handle the situation. And Buddy Poo in Chapter 9, things are going to be getting Cosmerean because, well, wait, first, we pick up with Kaladin, who is having his sad boy times at an all-time high or low, one of the two. And we see this because Laurel is hit the third ideal and people are celebrating, but Kaladin's like, nah, I'm gonna go over here and talk about my depression with Syl. And it's kind of not great, and even one of the people who's like a part of his like Windrunner crew is, dude, like, you're our guy, you're not gonna be a part of it. It's a moment, we get what's building with Kaladin. But he leaves to escort Dalinar and Navani to the Shattered Plains, back away from the kingdom that Kaladin calls his homeland. We then do follow Navani, who's being transported in this wooden sphere that's being Spider-Man'd all the way back to the Shattered Plains. And the interesting thing here is she's studying this Fabrial, but notices a red light, a literal red light, blinking. That's like, you got a message, and she doesn't know who it's from, but the Spanreed begins writing, stop making Fabrials. They're causing suffering beyond what any human can comprehend for Spren. Cut it out. And she's like, damn, I don't know what's really going on there. But from there, we're going to pick up with Shallan. And she's talking about the assassination with Adolin. And she's like, that guy, like, dude, definitely assassinated. Not good. And they talk about whether or not it would have been right for Shallan to kill Lael. Me and names, bro. But internally, Shallan is like super on her Billie Eilish shit this book. She's definitely like, I'm a bad guy because I was like gonna kill him. And she's like having internal conflict literally with her other selves internally. But the big thing here is once they look in the notebook, we see the names Nothelus, Nolithus, Scadriel, and Haldane. And these are all Cosmere things. This is the Mistborn world, for example. So, we have seen the Stormlight Archive be one of the big things that is stepping into the wider Cosmere, especially with Sunlit Man, which is like very related to the Cosmere, though I wouldn't call that a Stormlight Archive book. It's like a Stormlight Archive tangential book. But this, big deal, very cool. But if you don't know what that is because you haven't read any Mistborn stuff, it's a-okay. It's just a cool thing for fans to go, ugh! I now have Billie Eilish stuck in my head, but that's not a bad thing. From here, we're going to talk about Chapter 10. That's right, we're not even a tenth of the way done. And this is going to be a pure Kaladin chapter. Wrong color marker. And Syl tells him that a Spren named Yunfa wants to talk, and this Spren is like, I don't know who to bond, and Kaladin's like, bond Rlain. Nah, that's not right. And Kaladin really is like, you just do it for 10 days, and if it doesn't work, then it's like, do something else. We're just really setting up that Kaladin, sad boy era. From here, he arrives at Narak, and he has a conversation with Dalinar. He's like, these 1v matches are good because they reduce casualties, but Kaladin is clearly just showing signs that Dalinar's picking up on, that he's like not in good shape. And Dalinar, being a great leader, understands it's way more important that this like pivotal key player in the war gets the rest they need, takes a break, and gets their head on right, because if not, he's going to end up just spiraling out of control. So despite everything that's going on, he is relieving him of duty and saying, like, just help train, help do other stuff, do what you can. That's just as important for the war effort, which it is. And this is like a big point of Kaladin being like, ah! And Dalinar's like, report back in 10 days. See the parallel. We're booking now. We're going to get to chapter 11. Boy! 'Tis be the chapter of 11, and from here we are actually going to be following the POV of Venli. We see she is being encouraged by Timbre to say the second ideal, but later on when she's talking to Shumendul and Mazish, Sanderson and his dyslexia names, I swear to God. But she wants to run away. She's like, I'm just not about it. But before this can like go anywhere, at the same time, she mentions the fact that she can look into Shadesmar, but she swears it's just a part of being regal, which means being bonded to a lesser Void Spren. Before this can really develop into any like wider character beats, though, we see Leshwi arrive and they have news.
Good news, everyone!
That apparently is going to be massively influential on the direction of the war. So Leshwi comes in and goes, good news, everyone, but in a much more Leshwi way. Chapter 12, though, we are coming back to some human perspectives because we are following Kaladin as he has arrived in Urithiru, and Moash got to him. He tries to put on like his tough guy persona, being the Aragorn archetype, but with Brandon Sanderson's representation of mental health, the battle fatigue is, as they're referring to it here, just wearing him out. And I've made jokes about the whole sad boy thing, but I do want to take a moment to kind of put that persona aside and just genuinely address, like, I really love how Kaladin is being represented here, because at no point is it said that he is not strong or he is not an incredible warrior for facing what he's facing. I mean, this man has lost loved ones close to him, left, right, up, and down, and he has been fighting for 4 books now and seeing people he care about get just obliterated. There have been victories, but he is so humanized despite being elevated literally in ideals. It's probably why he's in most people's top 3, if not 1, Stormlight Archive characters, and certainly in my top 5 as well. Just wonderful representation, but he literally collapses. He just cannot handle it. And so Adolin arrives to take him out and be like, you need friendship and wholesomeness. And that's kind of what this chapter becomes, because they even made up with Veil/Radiant/Shallan, because they're a package deal. And we see some fun, interesting back and forth there as Kaladin continues to talk to Adolin, I believe, about his battle fatigue. I don't think it's Shallan, it's Adolin. And his like, oh yeah, because he also talks about like Shallan's mental health as well. Like, hey, this is a lot going on here. But at the end of this, we also see the more important character, Rock, has got to head on out because he's got to do a lifting of a bow back in his home country. It's a culture thing. Sanderson being cute with his culture world building, and I mean cute in a good way. It's great. And this is just like one of the nicest chapters we have gotten so far in terms of like nice in terms of tone. Lucky number 13 is going to be a Shallan chapter, so you know things are going to be getting weird. And I don't know if I've done a good enough job actually clarifying her exact duties in all of this and what she's been getting up to, because maybe there are more people who are just tuning in for a Rhythm of War summary who have not read the book, so I'll do that now. She has already been trying to infiltrate the Ghostbloods since the previous book and has made some progress. And that's going to kind of come to a head here. But first, she receives a span read, I believe, warning her that the Unmade, which are 9 evil spren that I think are part of Odium, yes, are sending more corrupted spren to Urithiru, which I also haven't set up what that is. We'll do that now. Urithiru is this massive tower of learning that they're kind of making their central base here in Rhythm of War, and kind of becomes the like central whole conflict location as the book will go on. But after seeing some sketchy stuff going on among some people who are in the tower, she decides to do some solo spy stuff, and in disguise using her light weaving as veil, re-meets up with some Ghostblood type people, and they're like, are you committed to the cause, boy? I don't even know what you're doing. And they're like, well, our goal is to actually get off of Roshar with all the power and magic we have. What? Hence the whole like other worlds being mentioned before. They're told she'll be able to get all of her answers at lasting integrity with Risteris. I think I'm saying that right. Find Risteris at lasting integrity. And if you don't know what lasting integrity, it's another fortress.
And the honor spren capital in Shadesmar.
And she ends up like leaving, not committing entirely to this. That being said, though, her, like, she didn't commit to it externally, but we, the reader, and her internally know, like,
tempting.
And chapter 14 is another Venli perspective. We're back in with the Parshendi, which I'm going to give them a British accent from now on, because to me it's very funny to put that in your head and you'll never be able to lose it. But Venli attends a meeting of the 9 with Odium watching. There's like a humming thing that informs her like Odium's doing his full-on Sauron stuff, which, you know, intimidating. And ended up talking about Bridge 4, Kaladin, like all of the threat they pose, because yeah, these guys are a big deal and they're a pain in the ass of these people. But Lizen is saying like, I'm going to go after Kaladin, but there's this whole conflict of people being like, I want to be the one who goes after Kaladin. It's all coming together for Kaladin not being allowed to get a break, which kind of sucks. Like, it's funny to see Kaladin be put on leave back in the human side, and then like only a couple chapters later we see all the Parshendi like, oi bruv, I want to be the one to take Kaladin down. That's not even British anymore. But it's like he is a celebrity of hatred amongst them, and they're all trying to go for his life. But this wider meeting is talking about there's going to be a siege of Urithiru, setting up what we all know we're building toward. And Taravangian is brought up with his inside info, but it's not too big of a surprise to us because we all know Taravangian up to no good. But Leshwi talking to Venli indicates that they want to stop this endless cycle of war, and they end up getting Venli to spy for them. Late night editing, Daniel here. Just a couple quick things, clarifying they're excited for Venli to go to this tower, not for research, but instead to hopefully find someone to help train her as a Radiant, because like low-key she be that. And also she's going to spy, not to spy on the humans, which I think Potato, helping me review this, I made it sound like, and instead she's going to spy on Romaniel, who's not obviously in this meeting. And Lazen is the fuse that Kaladin fought before. And my favorite part about what chapter 14 here is doing for us is we already know that there's conflict like within the Parshendi on this side of the war, but it really like manages to drill home like just as, not as nuanced as like the human side, but close enough to make this conflict feel as three-dimensional as possible. And as an epic fantasy writer, this is what differentiates the genre, in my opinion. Being able to go to all sides, develop a history, conflicts in every which way. This is the beauty of epic fantasy. And from now on, I'm going to take more time to make these more readable for you if you want to pause the video. Just realized I should be doing that. It's going to be better from here on out. We're going to improve as we go. And I'm going to take a deep breath and talk slower. Now, chapter 15 may be my favorite Kaladin chapter in the whole book. for several reasons. Because we see the 10 days have passed, and Cali Boy is straight up not getting his command back, and his former duties are passed to Sigzil and Scar. Not that Scar. He's from Lion King. The other Scar. But Kaladin goes and seeks out some advice and ends up talking to R'lain. Now, Kaladin tells him, like, hey, there's a Spren who I made bond you for 10 days. It's a trial. And R'lain's like, I joined Bridge 4 as a Parshendi because I was being discriminated against left, right, up, and down. I don't want a Spren who's being forced to bond me, my guy. I want one by my own merit. And that makes you kind of respect R'lain a lot. And it also recontextualizes like Kaladin's growing, not great behavior as he's been succumbing to all these pressures and mental illness. And it also just makes me love R'lain. R'lain, best Parshendi. Fight me. Oh, wait, he's a Parshendi. I should have said that different. Oh, governor, I don't want the forced one. Well, he's mushing this on over in his brain. Kaladin ends up talking to Zahale as well, and they end up sparring, and Kaladin summons Syl as a weapon, and Zahale responds with laundry. And I tried to draw a guy throwing laundry here, but it more looks like
nothing at all.
They end up talking about the Almighty. Zahale's like, do you believe in God? Kaladin's like, the world's complicated enough. But after Zahale ends up putting Kaladin on his back, he says, hey, come back to me. We'll do this, continue when you truly hate fighting, because you should. So, chapter 16 is a Navani chapter, and this is going to be more about the sphere and its wrongness, because Szeth actually had the sphere after he assassinated her husband, King Gavalar. And there is a wrongness, a evil aura, if you will, that Navani is feeling about this sphere. Why does Szeth have it? Well, apparently King Gavalar entrusted it to his own assassin because Szeth was not sent by the people Gavalar was afraid sent him. So Gavalar clearly knew some stuff that we're going to be learning as the Stormlight Archive story continues. But she ends up arguing with Dalinar, what to do with Szeth, this is assassin who's kind of like surrendered to them, seems to be wanting to be on their side, and oh wait, no, he certainly does, because he ends up proposing a solution to the situation and just like swears to Dalinar, and he's like, look, I'm your guy now. Sorry I killed that dude. Except he's kind of not. There's this moment where he asks Navani, like, well, what do you feel about me? And Navani's like, I hate you. Yeah, you should. Navani then goes up to a cloud walk where she runs into Gavin Nor, who's improving from what happened to him previously, and they're like, yay, good for you. But then she ends up going to a research area where two nerds are working on telescopes, shows them the sphere, and they have the same observation as her, and even R'lain notices, like, hey, there's like a song to this, because he picks up on the aura too, but in a Parshendi way, and it's like it's the wrong song. It's by it. Though it is like perfect, that little ding right there is supposed to be its perfection, not a crack. That certainly can be taken two ways. But at the end of this, we see that Dalinar is actually hanging out with Taravangian. The D and the T are together, which there's tension there since
He's a traitor!
But at the same time, Dalinar is not in the best light, because he released this memoir where he's documenting all of his crimes and stuff, which maybe wait till after the war to do that, but I get why you're trying to do it now. And then they end up having Adolin and Shallan arrive, as well as Mink, the spy person who was picked up at the beginning, and they summon a Stormlight map. Chapter 17. We are actually continuing essentially right where 16 left off, and we're still with Navani. But Jasnah and Wit come in while Mink is looking at this map that Shallan and Dalinar are explaining to him. And he kind of comes into the realization oh, Taravangian's going to betray you, and you know it. There's that, oh, you're keeping a spy within your ranks so that when the spy does the whada, you can go whada, whada. Brilliant. But at the same time, Mink, who, if you remember, is actually a general who's in command of a seized area, they promised to help him retake Herdaz, which I think is where he's from. Yes, he's a Herdazian. But to his credit, Mink is do not try and retake Alethkar, and instead retake Immel. No, not the One Piece character. Get out! And instead, a country within the region of Makabaka, the nationality of the guy that the king was meeting with at the beginning. It's a region, and Immel is a country within that region. Do I have that backwards? I don't think so. Now, Jasnah actually backs this idea up to Dalinar, and we continually see this instance where Dalinar can be convinced by Jasnah. He seems to really respect and trust her, and her proximity to Wit kind of just makes that like, yeah, trust the person who's hanging out with the individual who seems to be able to like hop around worlds, the Tom Bombadil of Stormlight. And it's brought up again that Jasnah also wants to free all of the Alethi slaves, which, yes, our good guys in this story still have slaves. Let's resolve that. But at the end, Wit comes back into the scene with Ash and Talon, who, if you remember, are heralds of the Almighty, and they talk about restoring the Great Oath Pact, which was broken, if you recall, at the beginning of the prologue of Stormlight Archive, A Way of Kings, I believe. And they talk about Shinovar, which Jasnah backs up again as a reason to help stabilize the area that Mink was already pointing them towards. So, like, we're seeing a lot of great, like, wider planning synergy within our side to make great strategic decisions, not based on emotion, but instead for wider plans. Wah-ha! I missed it. I'm so happy to see a Kaladin chapter at 18 because the Navani stuff is like harder to summarize, a little bit more straightforward because Kaladin hears that the fourth bridge is going to the Shattered Plains, so he takes an oath gate to meet up with his parents and show them their new digs that have been constructed for them to stay in, including like a bunch of books and surgical things. Like basically every refugee is being taken care of, but like his parents get extra nice because not nepotism, but is it nepotism if it's like son to parent? I don't know. Anyway, it's a cool place, and his parents are kind of like quiet about it, and his dad's like, hey, with all the healing going on, like this surgery isn't exactly needed. Dude, no. Your whole life's work is still very valid.
Edgerunners.
Can't heal everybody. My God. But then finally, Syl, who's been getting along with everybody phenomenally, of course, finally encourages Kaladin to break the news to his parents that he has been relieved of duty, and Kaladin gets to do the nice old, I'm tired, I'm retired. And obviously his dad, who's like an uber pacifist, is super happy about it. And there's this emotional like meh to this, in my opinion, where like I agree with his father. Violence is bad. But there is the equivalent of World War II happening, and it's a little strange when your son is like the Superman of this war to be like, it's awful that you're fighting. I respect his opinions, disagree, but I'm happy that Kaladin is at this point and think that there is valid angles from all sides. That's what I'll leave it at. But it's a great moment for Kaladin as a character and sets up his whole like arc and revelations throughout this book, emphasizing the emotional beats you need to experience as a reader. Stay hydrated, you fantasy hoes. But this takes me to thanking today's sponsor, Squarespace, which is the all-in-one website that is here to encourage entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you are just beginning or managing a growing brand, Squarespace is here to help you craft an entire ecosystem so that your business can be as efficient, clean as a whistle. Through building a website, engaging with your audience, all in one place on your terms, because they make it remarkably easy with features like their Fluid engine. If it seems a bit overwhelming to design a whole website around your business, Squarespace has simplified it so you need no experience in coding, you don't need to hire outside help, and instead you can just drag and drop to create a website that'll work on any device. But this allows you to actually implement your own style, flair, and creativity in whatever website you're designing, which I think is just brilliant, while being in a comfortable, easy to manage, fit space, so it's not overwhelming. Whether it's blogs, email campaigns, gated member areas, what have you, they got what you need to get started or add additional features to benefit your business. So go on over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to make your first purchase of a website or domain, go to squarespace.com/Daniel Green for 10% off your first purchase. Now go and get your business up and running today. He died. Chapter 19. Remember how I said Navani chapters are the most confusing? That still holds up here, at least for the first part, because she goes and visits some of the nerds she has working on these fabrials, and one of them, who's working on a suppression fabrial, says it contains a corrupt spren, and they're not making any progress on it. She says, hey, go ahead and do an Uno reverse on it, try and set it the other way, and this kind of is like showing us, the reader, that yes, she has smart people working for her. She's right that she's like, leading the scientist, but she's also a genius. From here, she also discusses the tower's security. I recommend they check out Simply Safe, not a sponsor, though. And they're even showing her this lifting fabrial. It's like a magic for all. Oh, we can use it for elevators. Communism. You get magic. You get magic. We're sharing it all. But a coalition of monarchs, I should have put this up here, a coalition of monarchs is happening, and on her way to it, she runs into Taravangian. And there's this, like, creepy moment where we know what he's working for, and he tells her in, like, a really, like, genuinely way, like, it's unsettling, that he's only doing what he believes at all times, what is best for Roshar. And with what we know about him, that's don't say that.
Because of the implication.
And the coalition of monarchs ends up approving Dalinar's mission to go to Emil, and at the same time, they come up with a idea of sending an envoy into Shadesmar, to the capital of the Honor Spren, because of, like, a bunch of the reasons we've mentioned in these previous chapters. Once again, Potatoes coming in clutch and pointing out, I didn't explain this. The reason they need to go is because they're running out of Spren to bond to make Radiance, because the amount of willing Spren is pretty much depleted. At the end of the chapter, Dalinar is talking to Navani, and he tells her, like, hey, while we're going to do this invasion, I need you to stay at the tower, like, your work here, super important, everything you got going on, and plus, like, there's the low-key undertone of, like, Dalinar doesn't want her in a super dangerous place. Little does he know, this tower is about to become a super dangerous place. And this is the end of part 1. This book is broken into, I think, 5 parts. Let's get to the interludes. All right, interludes 1, 2, and 3. Interlude 1, we follow Syl, who is just going about Urithiru and gets a nice little offering from Cord, someone who's got their own shard plate, and is finding herself, like, often distracted, which is hinting at a larger, internal conflict with the bond she has with Kaladin. And she is struggling to actually understand Kaladin's depression. She's kind of a continually, like, life's kind of awesome person, so Cal being depressed is something she just doesn't get. So when a high storm arrives, she's able to communicate with the Stormfather, and she asks him to actually, like, make her understand depression by, like, giving it to her. And the Stormfather is like a big old dude. No, I'm not going to give you depression. You can work on your bond with Kaladin. And I just dropped 2 markers. And continuing some parallels between the Stormfather and Dalinar, she then goes to Dalinar and kind of makes the same request, and Dalinar is a very similar answer, which is just like, I'm not going to give an adorable tiny little blue spirit depression. I don't even know if Dalinar could do that. And this takes us to Interlude 2 with Sha-Anat, who is between realms at the Cosmere Palace. And we know she works for Odium, but wants to be, like, a little more free in that relationship. So we see before Odium's arrival at the location she is at, she sends away 2 corrupted Wind Spren and 1 Radiant Spren, yes, to Urithiru. And then we see Sha-Anat is told by Odium to keep an eye on Taravangian. In the third interlude, we actually are following Taravangian as he's meeting with his close council and essentially being like, once we're at Imul, we'll betray everyone and stab them in the back. Wahaha! And he kind of reassures himself, like, there's only one way I could have come out doing any good in this conflict, and it's saving this one city that I'm setting up to be saved. Which, like, dude, no. Disagree. Saving one city of all of Roshar is not a victory worth betraying everyone for, my guy, in my humble opinion, you crazy little Taravange. And I am so happy to say that returning to the chapters, specifically chapters 20, we are jumping in once again with Shallan. And what's fun about Shallan, well, Navani might be the most confusing character to study and follow. Shallan is the weirdest, and it makes it so much fun, because we also get to play a wonderful game with Shallan called Who's That Spy? And she is going through the people near her trying to figure out who the spy could be. And she settles on it's either Ishna, Vatha, Biril, or Stargil. And if you haven't read these books in a while and you're like, who are they? Same. But while she does decide that it could be all 4 of these people, another of her personalities comes through, specifically Vale, and marches on over and says, Ishna, Vatha, and Stargil are all going to be coming on the trip to the Honor Spren capital in Shadesmar. We all get to go. But when she comes back to her room with Vale, forcibly staying in charge for the rest of the day, she sees that Mraize has left a cube for her and is like, hey, stay in touch with me using this cube while you're on your mission. What is the cube? It's a thing she can use to stay in touch with Mraize. Why? That shouldn't be confusing to you at all. And I'm thrilled to say that Chapter 21, we finally follow a new perspective we have not followed yet here for a full chapter, disregarding the interludes, of course, and that would be a chapter with Adolin. Look at it. Our resident himbo acted like he's a real boy. No, I'm playing. I love Adolin. But if you are doubting that he is the himbo of the Stormlight Archive, it starts off with him taking too long to get ready because he can't decide what to wear into Shadesmar. So Shallan comes in and lectures him before he goes to see Kaladin, knowing he only has an hour left before he has to be at the gate. And he informs Kaladin, like, hey, you're being hit on while you're being this, like, surgeon, because Kaladin's working for, like, a medical tent while he's off duty. Damn, you're right, I am. Adolin also kind of directly reminds Kaladin that, like, they're in a world that requires fighting, and he doesn't think that Kaladin's retirement in this is going to be forever, and Syl gives him some last-minute advice on how to, like, handle Shadesmar. They do go into Shadesmar after he sees some, like, preparation getting done that's pretty neat in terms of, like, research happening, and he has an emotional, like, turbulent conversation with Dalinar, but after that, him, Shallan, Godeki, or however you say that person's name, the Edge Dancer, and everyone else that has been on this mission heads on off into the cognitive realm. Now, I know what you're thinking. We're in the cognitive realm, the realm of secrets and mysteries. Does that mean that, Daniel, we are going to find out what is in your secret codex, the answers to the Cosmere? Not yet, actually. That's right. You got to stick around and watch. But do not worry, because we're still about to have a fun time, because this is an Adolin chapter yet again. Oh boy, Adolin, you get 2 in a row. Wow. But the main focus of this chapter, if you will note here, is his shard blade, which in the cognitive realm takes the form of Maya. And she is silent, but Adolin excitedly takes her around and introduces her to everybody, kind of ignoring the fact that she has clawed out eyes, though continues to follow Adolin as they head down the ramp, and Adolin gets to, like, talk to and know everybody in the party, being his charming Adolin self. And then he teaches her how to groom a horse. And I'm not even going to try to draw a horse real quick. But, plot twist, there is a Shallan section here where she goes to the cube and sees that someone else has used it, presumably to communicate with, you know, the person who gave it to her. Mraize. So, someone touched her cube. Don't touch other people's cubes or spheres. Don't touch people's shapes. Now, if you've had too much of Adolin, do not worry, because in Chapter 23, we're back to our King Sad Boy Kaladin, who is chatting with Syl after going about more surgery-type duties about how they can be more useful to the cause without fighting, with all of the powers at their disposal, and they're able to come up with some good stuff. But Syl seems kind of off. Syl sad? But someone had asked Kaladin to find someone named Noril who is suffering from a similar mental state as him. On the way, though, Kaladin finds Teft, who, as far as he's aware, should still be with Bridge 4. So he's like, what's going on? But apparently Teft asked Dalinar to also relieve him of duty so he could stay around Kaladin, because he's like, you're my guy. And that's really sweet. And Kaladin at first is like, no, but after a while is like, you're allowed to make your own choices. And you made this choice. Let's go find Noril. But this takes us to Chapter 24, which is a Shallan continuation of where we left off after someone used her cube. And this is going to specifically involve her contemplating why exactly the Ghostbloods are after one of the unmade, specifically Ba-Ado Mishram. All right, Sanderson, you're just being cute now. And what's the deal with getting Stormlight off-world? Like, that seems like a big, you know, predicament for everyone to be in if they succeed. Or will it be? Who knows? Now, when Adolin comes on over and starts being all adorable himbo with her, she finally confesses to him that the reason she actually originally, all the way back in Way of Kings, joined up with Yasna was to rob her, and Adolin's just like, that's awesome. Like, he's not angry, he's just like, that's so funny. Like, all right, cool. I got no problem with that, which is why we all do like genuinely love Adolin. There's also a misprint that like looks at Shallan as doing all this drawing, because I'm sure you're aware of this if you're watching this, but Shallan loves to draw and is a little bit disappointed and mentions something about the unmade that the Ghostbloods are after. But when they ask the like misprint, hey, what up with that? She's like, ask the heralds, because we're doing a little bit of that lost thing where it's like, I don't got the answers. Go to that person. They got the answers. And then that person may or may not. Also, can you tell I've been shooting for hours because now there's this big ass shadow behind me? Time is progressing. Now in chapter 26, we are back to Shallan, and she is going, all right, so no one inside my head moved the cube and is just not fessing up to it, which is an actual concern that she has to like have whenever something unexplained happens around her, because she does not remember what her other personalities do all the time. So none of them have done it, and they communicate that clearly to each other. And if you're wondering, yes, this comes across very Inside Out from Pixar. Though she comes up with a plan to find out which of the potential spies she brought along hath done it. I keep wanting to say Daryl, but I think it's like Daryl. Anyway, Daryl. She like feeds him a piece of information. And the Valfal one, they're not in front of me, and I'm not remembering how to say that. And there's also like continual interplay of her inner conflicts going on as she's trying to handle these situations and suffering from different forms of anxiety. And this comes to like a full head with her retreating in her own mind and like forcing Vale in control while like not talking to Vale from her own head. It's cool. It's weird, like in a good way. It's very weird, but it's also a decent representation of like mental health struggles. 27 might be the easiest chapter to do so far. We are back with Navani, and she's essentially saying like her final prep goodbyes to the people who are heading out to Immel, and then they bounce. Afterward, after talking with some of her people about the ongoing sciencey projects, she gets a span read indicating that her mysterious contact wants to talk once again. And if you are someone who has not read Rhythm of War and has stuck around this long, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much are you able to keep up? I'm really actually curious. Chapter 28 continues the Navani time, and guess what? The call from the span read is coming from inside Urithiru, inside the tower. It's terrifying, and they need to figure out a way to locate whoever this is. So they move to a second location because they're doing like a measurement of where it's coming from to like how it's getting to the location. Once they're at a second location and reinitiate the conversation, the caller admits that they are a Spren, but Navani's like, I know you're not one of the Unmade though. You were Spren, but you ain't one of the Unmade. And earlier in this chapter, we had it reiterated again that Navani's research, like the creation and usage of Fabrials, in some way is harming Spren. So there's these like underlying questions permeating the tension of the call coming from inside the house. This ends though with Navani kind of pulling a baller move where she makes it seem like she accidentally destroys the span read that this caller has been using, but in reality she did it intentionally, and this is just her pulling a Tyler the Creator like, I don't want to talk unless you actually show up face to face. Let's do it. Communicate with me. This takes us to another multi-POV chapter where we're going to be jumping between Adolin, Shallan, and back to Adolin. That's right, this is one of those rare examples I was talking about. Why? You'll see, you impatient bastard. But we're going to go ahead and start with Adolin, because on their barge that they're drifting through the cognitive realm in, I don't know if I mentioned that before, they're going through the cognitive realm in like one of the things Navani helped invent, you know what I'm talking about? And they're talking about how their Stormlight reserves are running a bit low, but land ho, so maybe it won't be that go home. I tried. And it is noted that Shallan is hung over, clearly having dealt with the emotional turmoil in an unhealthy way that she was feeling in the previous chapter. But when we cut to Shallan's perspective, with everyone going into a town they see from the barge, she's like, I'm going to stay behind to do nothing you need to ask about. So everyone else go on. I'm gonna stay and watch the barge, and everyone agrees. So she and Pattern, notably, stay behind so she can make a call to Mraize, who I keep just wanting to call Maze, like corn, and she manages to pick up the cube and call Mraize, and noting that the cube has been moved again, so obviously whoever the spy is has hopefully passed on the information that she leaked to the various people to keep it creepy, or I don't know why I said creepy. To keep it like so she can find out who the spy is. From here, though, we're going to jump back to Adolin because Maya asks, hey, why did Shallan stay behind? And Adolin's like, that's entirely wrong. He's wandering to Maya about it. She's mute.
When you talk for hours and hours, that's my only excuse.
But the interactions with Maya continue with her becoming transfixed with another dead-eyed Sprint. And then Adolin realizes that this other dead-eyed Sprint died recently, and it's setting up the truth of the Sprint suffering that will soon be fully revealed. In the end of this, though, Adolin has someone run on up to him. It's Godeki, and Godeki warns them that a caravan of humans that are not themselves are on the way. Chapter 30 is actually going to take us to continuing our time in Shadesmar. And yes, we've made it all the way to chapter 30. Can you believe it? I started at 11 a.m. It's 3:30. Anyway, this is going to kick off with Shallan, and she makes the call to Braze over the phone. Bring, and guess what? He has the misinformation from Burl, so that's the spy. But after obsessively drawing the cube again and again and again and again and again, internally with her other voices, there's doubt. It's too easy. This is simple. It seems like we got played on our play. So stressed, Shallan leaves again, and Vale takes over. And Vale wants to go see the himbo, so Shallan takes off. But here we're going to cut to Adolin, back with that caravan of humans, and the caravan...
I don't want to talk.
Neither. So... that's kind of unfortunate, but they only speak broken Alethi anyway, so it wasn't going to be that easy. Adolin with Godeki, or however you're supposed to say that name, is able to deduce that they are Takari, which is from a western part of Roshar. On the way back to the barge, he runs into an honor spren named Notum, and Notum is surprisingly about their mission, and ends up getting like a little confrontational with Adolin due to the fact that he was involved at the climax of the last book, which we're not summarizing here. But Adolin seems to do a faux pas when he says the honor spren should follow Syl and her example because they see her as so precious, and even apparently Maya is Maya, whatever you want to say it doesn't like that. But this confrontation with Adolin being who Adolin is only kind of ends up strengthening his resolve to keep pushing forward because Adolin. Now, by about this time, I'm aware that every single goblin watching this video is screaming at the camera, Daniel, it's been far too long since you did a British accent. Well, I am happy to say that we're back with Venli, isn't it? Because this whole chapter, chapter 31, essentially just exists to inform us that yes, they are approaching the Tower of Urithiru, though it's also implied that Robanil knows that Venli is a spy, and she's also warned by one of Leshwi's people not to get too entangled with the fused. And Kayla's the one who's doing a first pass-through edit of all these clips just to get rid of all the mistakes, and I'd love for Kayla to throw up a number on screen right now. In terms of these people, how confused are you? What do you think about the fused and the Parshendi? 1 to 10, just throw that up on screen.
That number does not exist.
In 32, we leave the Brits behind and instead come back to Adolin and Shallan. We start with Adolin, and the most important thing here is that the caravan of the people who are from the west of Roshar are just following in their footsteps, but they can't really confront them because they've already been informed that these people are welcome here and they're doing nothing illegal. Adolin decides to go to talk to Shallan because he's like, man, how are we actually going to handle this whole approaching the Spren thing? This is when we cut to Shallan, who's hanging out with Biril, or Dolly, name's not in front of me, the one she thinks is the spy, and internally she's warring on how to figure out this whole situation, but that is when Adolin approaches right as Vale takes control, and they talk about how to best approach this situation where they're trying to be a diplomatic mission to the Spren, though there's been these inklings that there's something wrong, and Adolin has the realization there's no real way we can surprise them. They're gonna see whatever we try and come with coming, and we're kind of going on this diplomatic mission to insist on ourselves to these people who might be a bit peeved that we are insisting on ourselves. But at this point, Adolin kind of sniffs out, I'm talking to Vale again. Is something wrong with Shallan? And Vale starts to tell Adolin that yeah, some stuff's wrong with Shallan. And this causes internally Shallan to run even deeper away into the super subconscious. And yeah, tensions are a brewing. I'm so excited to get to this next chapter though, because for chapter 33, I get to just say Kaladin starts a group therapy session with all the people who are suffering from depression and or other after effects of being soldiers in combat. Done. Chapter 34 is also pretty simple because Shallan is in a meeting with like everyone aboard the barge, and all of them are like, man, how are we going to approach the honor sprint? And me as a reader going, why didn't you discuss this before you entered Shadesmar? Why wasn't this a part of a conversation that like Yasna and Navani were there for? Because holy crap, guys. Then Adolin and Shallan go on a walk, and they see Notium, who tries to show up and be like, hey, living up to my name, no, how about you don't come try and do this diplomatic stuff? We're gonna. And then Adolin and Shallan, who is Vale at this moment, continue their walk until Adolin is able to like coax Shallan out, and then they actually have like a really nice, beautiful time on a ridge where they see some spectacular sights and bond over past relationships, and Adolin like super duper promises like, I'm not going nowhere. I like got the feels for you, and you shouldn't be all nervous. And it's adorable. This takes us to 35, where Adolin is told that, hey, this caravan, they're not following you anymore. And he's like, really? Oh, wait. Oh my god, no! And he just like takes off. We see from Shallan's perspective, she's doing more like, okay, I don't think Beryl's actually the spy. Why is Adolin sprinting by? And then we cut back to Adolin's perspective, and I don't feel like including that in the board. Adolin then catches back up to Notium and sees that the Takaraki people from the west are like trying to kill him by stabbing him a lot. And in case you forgot, Adolin, yeah, we've been joking about him. He's also a badass, and he single-handedly like crashes into this full caravan of humans and starts just fighting them off, protecting Notium, and his Spren, Maya, shows up with her own sword. Maya, I'm going to correct it every time so you can't comment about it, and they back-to-back work together to save this Spren. Oh, this whole how are we going to approach the Spren thing? I think we just got an idea. I just realized that from like a YouTube perspective, I've set up this shot without a lot of distance between this wall and myself, which means there's not going to be a whole lot of depth here. And so instead of getting the nice blurred background look, is this whole time it's just kind of looked like Blair Witch? God, I hope not. Anyway, chapter 36 is once again a Shallan Adolin chapter. And this, wow, we are spending way more time with these two than I remember my first time through this book. But we see that Shallan, once they get back from this big bloody situation, sees her cube has been touched again. But the only person who stayed behind when this was happening was Pattern. And she then tests Pattern and notes that he lies to her. How? Oh my God! No, genuinely, this was like a huge shock to me when I read this. Though I was like, how could Pattern be so careless to do it? Well, the cube was the only person he could touch it. That's not the way to say those words, you know what I mean? But we'll get there. Now, Adolin has a duty to do because he gets approached by Honor Spren from Lasting Integrity, the fortress we talked about that was across the sea, hence why they had to go over that sea the whole time. And they're like, no, dog, we ain't gonna talk to you. And Adolin, thinking on his feet, goes, I'm here to face trial for my ancestors' actions. Boom. Oh, shit! That's actually a really good play. And Adolin internally is kind of like, oh, no, that was good. But they tell him, like, all right, if you want to face trial for what the horrible things your ancestors have done, you can come in chains with two people and Maya, your Spren, who is like an example of the exact kind of stuff we've been talking about. And of course, he chooses Shallan and Pattern, and they go into the city of the Spren, or the fortress, the place, the capital, the where they wanted to go. Now, for chapter 37, we have encountered one of the trifecta point of view chapters. That's right, we're getting 1, 2, 3 POVs, and in fact, pulling a little doopy whoopy, we actually jump from Venli to Kaladin back to Venli during this chapter, but I've combined them. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off with Navani, who we see is working with more of those lifting magical devices we saw before, and now it has been included into a glove. And you know what they say, if the glove fits, you must lift. But she is approached by a soldier who has made an arrest of someone who she commands to be taken to her quarters that was caught trying to recreate the span reed she broke. Ha ha! But right when you think, oh, they're about to get some answers to some mystery, boom! And there's an explosion. Cut to Venli. Venli's crew, the assaulting Parshindi Brits, have decided to approach the tower during an everstorm. And they don't have that hard of a time because the security system of Urithiru has not been brought up to its peak level. Their Simply Safe system was there, but they hadn't armed it, if you know what I'm saying. And they end up running into some soldiers who I, for some reason, put soldies, and we see Venli feels horrible about this despite having been involved with some wars before, but it turns out she was more of a big old nerd during these wars, a bit of a scholar if you do accept that. But then we cut to Kaladin, who is having the most progressive chat with his parents like ever in terms of like mental health, because he is like, this is the problem, right? Everyone starts to other people who are suffering from mental health issues, and it compounds the problems and makes them feel further alienated. And I don't like that people like me are treated like that, to which his mother's like, but you're not mentally ill. And he's like, you're part of the problem. Yeah, I am. And don't act like it's a bad thing for me to say it. And his mom, to her credit, is like, you right. Thanks for challenging me on that. And at this point, like, Kaladin gets into the fact that there needs to be like a full medical revolution. It gets like a little bit too like, we get it. You're trying to get the bonus points for mental health rep. But at the same time, I would rather this any day than the opposite, which also still plagues fantasy book storytelling to this day. And the end of this Kaladin section does not involve him being made aware of the Parshendi Brits going through fighting other soldiers, put in the Kaladin part, not the Parshendi part. And instead, he is more made aware that Dabid is missing, so he goes to see if they are with R'hllane. And this takes us to 38, and you might notice something similar about this board. Absolutely, we are going Navani, Venli, Kaladin again. And yes, we are even doing the same combo where the actual POV jumping is Navani, Venli, Kaladin, Venli, but we're able to bring them together. So let's start off with Navani, where it turns out the explosion was not from something related to Venli. It was not like them setting off a bomb at the bottom of the tower to try and 9/11 a hoe. And instead, it was from the Sphere research, and it ended up killing 2 researchers. Big, sad. From here, we cut to Venli, and they are moving around a lot of dead humans. Venli don't like that, but they've managed to get into the basement of Urithiru, which contains like a pillar of gems that Rubinel approaches and touches and has like a full-on voidgasm with, and now I need to do my best impersonation of an orgasm of a British person brought about through contact with void light. Oi! Just as they are going to be able to take control of the full tower, the alarm system and everything, because that's kind of what this area gives them access to. Why it's at the bottom and not the top? There is an alarm that sounds. And yes, the battle will soon begin. Is that why we're cutting to Kaladin? No, because the big thing that happens here while they're still further up the tower and unaware of what's going on below them is that he agrees to start talking in group therapy too. Wholesome. Chapter 39. No Venli this time. We are just alternating repeatedly between Kaladin and Navani. Easily combined with Kaladin sees Teft begin to seize, but suddenly he can't lash him. And he also felt something strange press against like him. So something's going on, obviously. He's freaking out that he especially can't use his powers properly. And also, Syl's not around. And R'hllane, I believe, says like, dude, the rhythms are going crazy. You could almost say they're warlike. So they decide to go ahead and try to take Teft, who may be having some kind of stroke, to his father. But on the way, they find that all the edge dancers are also kaput. So, oh snap. This is reminding Kaladin of something he saw back in Hearthstone. Yeah, buddy, you under attack. But as they begin to hear sounds of violence in the distance, Kaladin tries to pick up a scalpel to begin to fight, but he has cold sweats and flashbacks, and he's in no condition to fight. And a returned yet kind of sleepy and not able to go as far away from him Syl warns that they are bringing in reinforcements through oath gates. From here, we cut to Navani, who learns that the person, the culprit, who was trying to connect her with the span read again was Dabid, who is mute, and so he can't give her direct answers right away, but he does try to be like, I'm not bad, I'm not enemy, I'm trying to help you out. And at this point, a span read is brought in, where the person on the other end introduces himself to Navani as the sibling. And sibling informs Navani, oh doggy, you are being attacked by Fused, and they are currently doing something to me that I do not like. And so if you could please go and take care of that, it would be much appreciated. So Navani assembles her crew and goes to the map room to try and helm the defense of the tower, which, in my head, is a lot like the Situation Room in Battlestar Galactica, where they're always like, doing the fights. That's what I pictured. Back when we found out it was pattern touching Shallan's shape, I missed out on a prime opportunity to add like a capstone joke to my don't touch shapes thing. It's too late. I've missed the opportunity. The board's changed. You'd be able to tell in the edit. My shadow's thicker. But just know, I too now see that missed opportunity. Though, in Chapter 40, we're going to be picking up with a solid Navani chapter, but it ain't even that confusing because they begin to get their plan together. And obviously, they want to undo whatever it is the Poshendi did down in the basement. And actually remembering to do a bit of a capstone joke, now that they're talking to Sibling, who is the sprint of the tower, and we realize it is the tower talking to them, the call wasn't coming from inside the house. The call was coming the house. But Sibling also, like, definitely wants to stop what's going on. They've been awake since a bondsmith showed up, just staying in hiding, and Sibling agrees to guide them. Like, they're going to be defending the tower with the tower being their own, like, sentient security system, which is badass. But to take down the Lady of Pain, Sibling advises Navani to go ahead and gather as much stormlight as she can. This next chapter 41 is going to be very easy to get through because it's primarily an action chapter, though it does include some Venli, because their party finds the pursuer, who is given permission by Robinil to go kill Kaladin. Venli grows even more conflicted about this as she realizes that Robinil is mainly just here to steal the humans' research and just take advantage of the fact that their like army is not around, and she's seeing more and more people die when Venli just kind of wants to protect her own people. So being on the offensive does not feel right. But from here, we're going to jump to Navani, and as they are descending down to the lower levels, her section can be summed up with cool action written by Sanderson. Following that up with Kaladin, who kind of does the opposite of it. He's trying to help bring like medical supplies, blankets to people who are like in need now, and he's confronted, and he realizes the Regal is just itching for a fight, and to get out of it, Kaladin just kind of like backs down, realizing he's a big target. If he makes a spectacle of himself, it'll only cause more problems, and he ends up kind of like outsmarting the situation and sticking with his overall theme. Noise. All right, so this takes us to chapter 42, where Navani from Sibling has been shown this massive store of uninfused sapphire. Great for their current situation. Though, there is a human trader who is definitely working with them, and Sibling tells them, like, yo, they got an honor blade, and it's definitely Moash. We all just know it's Moash. Sibling then tells Navani, though, to destroy the gemstone because her soldiers are dead, and there's no escape. She's going to be taken. So they have that, like, moment where it's like, oh God, what do we gotta do? We're gonna be taken, so do the thing. And we've all seen that in a million stories. It happens now. She's gonna be taken to a job offer, but first we need to jump ahead to Robinil. And she is feeling the like soul taint, whatever you want to call it, and I mean taint is in the Wheel of Time way, YouTube, don't ding me on that, of this tower. And she's like, why is it stormlight, not some kind of light that this tower should be having? I'm not entirely sure about that. And a shield forms around them that's like impenetrable from the energy within this tower. And she's informed that Navani has been found. Don't kill her. Bring me Navani. And once Navani is brought, how about I let you keep doing your research and you work for me? Because I'm interested, as we established earlier, in all this human research fabrial stuff. To which Navani, like, considers, because she'd be able to still do research, and scientists, you know, they're all about that. And there is a brief Kaladin beat here where we see that Syl does feel depression for a moment, and that hurts me to say. I don't like that I'm made to say that right now. And this takes us to chapter 43, where we see Kaladin is informed of Navani's surrender, and him and his parents begin to argue about resisting. Syl warns them that a search party is on the way, and a brutal fight ensues, because Kaladin just can't stand hiding seeing Teft possibly taken for being a Radiant. So he bursts forward, pushing his father back, and gets in a brutal fight with a Regal. And in his father's clinic has like a, you know, like that scene in Saving Private Ryan where the dude like slowly gets stabbed, and it's just like that kind of tone where you're like, oh, this isn't fun violence. That happens in the clinic, and his father is just like, my son's a monster, you just committed murder, get out. Kaladin does let one soldier go, though, so Kaladin takes Teft and leaves his father's clinic. And it's a real emotional low point in the story because it's right before another interlude. That's right, we have finished part 2. And our first interlude begins with Vyre. Vyre ends up having a conversation with Odium and is obsessed with Kaladin to the point where even Odium is like, hey man, even outside of this like fantastical setting, I just want you to know, bit weird. Odium does, though, want to use Vyre's like obsession connection to Kaladin to end up bringing him pain through dreams, and Vyre says the way to defeat Kaladin is to isolate him from his friends and make him afraid. Interlude 2 is following Lift and her not wanting to like grow up and change because she's terrified her mother won't recognize her, and then she ends up being hunted by Mraze, or as I like to call him, Maze. Picture Maze. This is Lift being chased by Khorne, and that fits the tone of Lift, my least favorite character in all of the Cosmere. Interlude 3 within part 2 follows Taravangian as he kind of has a compassionate like clarity moment because he's having a dumb day and he realizes on my dumb days I feel compassion and on my smart days I feel no compassion. Oh my god, have been making a terrible mistake. And when Odium comes to talk to him, he actually manages to make it so that Odium shows him like some blind spots of himself, and he picks up on the fact that Odium is terrified of Szeth and Szeth's blade, and he's like, wait, I think I just figured out how to defeat Odium. This is a big deal. Oh, but then when he gets sent back from the vision from Odium, he still orders his troops to betray Dalinar and immediately gets arrested. Because, you know, they saw that coming. As you can probably tell by looking at me, I have failed you, audience. It did indeed take me 2 days, hopefully not 3, to do this entire summary. But fear not. That just means I have more energy and am better prepared to get you through the rest of Rhythm of War. And, fun enough, now that we are starting on a second day, you might be thinking it's time to open my secret little doobajiggy. No, obviously not. Stop asking about it. It's frankly quite rude. But this is going to take us to chapter 44, which is once again a Kaladin chapter. And it's a very simple one because he's avoiding a search party and the Parshindi pursuer coming after him, and also him and Syl managed to find a secret staircase by activating a gemstone in a wall and fusing it with stormlight, and he gets his own little private room where he collapses and sleeps. And so he goes from running Kaladin to ZZZZZ Kaladin. And your boys earned it. Chapter 45 actually picks up 9 years prior, where we are following Venli's sister, Eshone, and she is going on about like not learning the songs, and she eventually stumbles upon humans. It's just giving us a more well-rounded view of Parshindi's 9 years prior, but she's out there going like tea and governor and bruv, and before she finds the human beings. We then cut to Venli, who is practicing the songs with her mother, and she is like thinking that Ashonia is abandoning her duties by not doing the first rhythm with them. First rhythm? You know what this rhythm is right now? This is the rhythm of summary. She also says like, hey, I think I have found a way to activate the war form by taking a pain sprint into my gem heart thingamabobber. But before they can go off to do some ceremonial like elevation for Venli, they hear Eshone's encounter with the humans going on, and guess what? It's not going great. Now this takes us to chapter 46, where we see that Navani has accepted Rubinel's offer to work together. And she actually is told that soulcasters are Spren that have just chosen to enter the physical world in this way. But Void Spren, written here in black to highlight that they are voidish, have not been able to be brought in the same way. Though Rubinel promises that they're working to end the war. Like that's their end goal by working with Navani and all their research. So Navani tells her scholars, 2 of which have died, to go ahead and start taking all the notes and everything that they're working on, hand them over. But how much is Navani actually collaborating? You'll find out. But we're cutting over to Kaladin, who is in one of these dream attacks that we saw set up before, and he witnesses in the Shattered Plains a friend fight. That sounds like a whole lot of fun. It's not. It's the worst version of a friend fight, and they're all like blaming him for their torment. It's awful. And Moash shows up and just says, I'm not even going to dignify his words by saying them. He says Moash stuff, which is the worst stuff. But once he wakes up, he asks Syl about sibling, the like Spren in the tower. This sibling from sibling from Syl. This is not meant to be like Syl is his sibling, which I know would make the people who weirdly ship Syl and Kaladin upset, or maybe they'd like it even more because those people are already weird. That's not a ship anyone who's sane agrees with. That's like, what are your thoughts on Tinkerbell? Stop. Stop what you're doing. But she actually tells Kaladin, I almost forgot to continue the summary here, that it was a spren of one of the bondsmiths originally. At chapter 48, we pick up with Dalinar, which this is not the first Dalinar POV. It can't be. 48 chapters in, right? I'm just drawing a blank from the haze of yesterday's summary. Have to be. Anyway, Dalinar is on his way, of course, to war, but he receives word of something fishy at the tower. I bet that's part of Taravangian's plan. Yeah, they can't do their stuff. There's probably some weird things going on, but I can't handle that right now because Nalan, not Christopher Nolan, Nalan appears, one of the heralds, and Seth like tries to protect Dalinar, but Dalinar still is like, all right, let's talk this out. And Nalan's like, stop the war, please. And they end up in a little bit of a tussle, and when Dalinar touches at Odium, I think's like beckoning, not Odium, Stormfather's beckoning. That's literally the opposite side of things. He touches him and he sees 8 lines. 6 of them weak, yes. One of them super powerful and still strong, and the other broken. And he realizes he is seeing the Oath Pact, like, extending into the distance from this fella. And he's like, the conclusion of this article after Nalan leaves. When I said last chapter was chapter 48, I meant that was chapter 47. And this is chapter 48, where we're following Eshonai again. Eshonai, as she is in communication with the humans. And she's admiring the fact that they're in, like, all forms at all times. Because if you remember from Parshendi culture, they have to like take different forms, like war form. But she's like, man, these humans, they're just in all their forms. That's dope. They go to see the planes, and she's just showing the humans around, like, this is our stuff. It's cool. You want to see my knife? That's from an ancient city. It's really cool. Old things. But a chasm fiend appears at this time. But once we get away from that, and they're like making camp, Gavalar is super excited about all the ancient stuff, and he realizes that they have songs about radiance, and he's geeking out. He's a total nerd. We thought he was like a badass king. Turns out he's just a history nerd. Maybe the worst kind of nerd, though. Chapter 49, once again, we are flipping from Navani, Kaladin, Navani, and yes, they do need to be separated out because we see Navani is being watched. These are not boobs, I just realized. These are eyes. I need to make that a little clearer. That somehow did not help, but Navani is being closely watched, but manages in secret to talk with Sibling, the spren of the tower. And Sibling says that apparently one of the Unmade thought they're dead, which is a huge advantage for them. Like, oh yeah, they thought the person who's an omniscient like voice in the tower was not here to help everyone. Don't tell them otherwise, but Sibling gives Navani a simple mission. There are 3 nodes that need to be activated for the full security system to come back online. The reason it wasn't put online before is because of some magic system stuff that they did, or they accidentally broke it. But there are also 2 Radiants still in the tower, Lift and Kaladin, and Navani tells Sibling to contact them. There we cut to Kaladin, and he does some like survival stuff, but the important thing, aside from him like going to the place where the therapy stuff was happening, the Davatory of Mercer, as he is contacted by Navani. They then meet up and exchange information. She tells him about the nodes, and they both agree that they have to make sure that the Oath Gates stop being operational so that, reinforcements can stop being brought in. So he'll keep an eye out for nodes. They'll look into the Oath Gates together, and both the Radiants are going to be contacted. Keep that in mind. This takes us to chapter 50. Yeah! And you're thinking, oh, we gotta be halfway, right? Right? Anyway, this is a Dalinar chapter, and we see that he has had a victory over Taravangian's troops. They are put in the dirt! Not actually necessarily, but you know what I mean. And they talk about how it is absolutely needed to push Odium to an accord, and this is really actually like a Yasna development-focused chapter from Dalinar's perspective, which I really like, because Yasna kind of represents the future, and Dalinar represents like the past, but how it's coming into the modern world. Anyway, she tells him that she wants the monarchy to end with her. No. Her generation, her thing to solve later on. But they move on to battle plans, and Yasna is like doing a whole bunch and trying to get a reaction from another leader in there, because eventually she does annoy this guy to the point where he has an outburst, and Wit then begins to just basically like 8 Mile finish the guy and reveals that he's an abusive father. It's really like, oh damn, this whole dude's reputation might be in the dirt. So that person then challenges Wit to a trial by combat, or just like to a duel, and Wit is like, okay, My champion is Yasna. No, I'm going to fight Yasna. And right when he says that, Yasna's like, okay, and stabs him in the throat, and then has someone come in and heal him. Your titles are forfeit because I just beat you, and you would have died if I didn't fucking heal you. Dalinar is like, hey, that's not how you should handle this stuff. Really? Because I just showed how easily manipulable and like gamey your system is. I'm the smart one. So I'm going to cover chapters 51 and 52 together because they flow into each other really nicely, and it's all from Venli's perspective. We see she is meeting with Ramanil, and they are talking about the fact that Navani is clearly stalling. There is some silent resistance going on, you may say, as they are trying to prevent everything from being handed over and the research from continuing at full speed. But this is not exactly something that Venli hates, because we see she goes and meets with some of her loyalists, and they start talking about, like, we're kind of the baddies. Like, we're kind of the bad guys here, and perhaps we should join the humans, though they're really concerned that the humans are going to be super racist towards them and not treat them equally if they join up, which, like, humans and being racist, color me done. They still decide to end up planting some of their people amongst the Parshendi that are taking care of the Radiants to look for an opportunity. Now, we cut to chapter 52, which takes place 8.5 years in the past, and we see that Venli's mother is losing her memory in like a very Alzheimer's type Parshendi way, and losing some of the songs that she used to never forget, which is really sad. Though there is a sign that the humans are back in the distance, and Eshonai is very interested in that. And when the humans arrive, they're super into the Parshendi music, so insert Beatles invasion joke here. And then we have Axandwith telling Venli to take a gemstone into a storm and break it. And they're saying this because they're like, yo, our ancestors had great powers. We may be able to like heal your mother. We just need to be able to embrace it. So take this gemstone, go into the storm, break it, don't question it, do it. Chapter 53 continues with Venli, and she is informed that Kaladin is indeed loose in the tower and has Teft. Oh no! Bad news for Kaladin, and even worse news, his family's been located, captured, and is set to be killed on Ramanil's orders. And Venli don't like that, so she tells Lishwi, and Lishwi's like, pip pip, we're not going to be doing that. And so they take Kaladin's family into their protection. And again, the conflict within the whole Parshendi angle of things just gives like so much more life to the story as a whole. I enjoy seeing the conflict kind of here and going on like over in Dalinar's camp, because, you know, Yasna just like killed and then revived another leader to prove a point. She's kind of more and more being influenced by Wit and how she's handling stuff, which, you know, they together. I originally did criticize this book quite a bit as my least favorite Stormlight book when I first read it. I'd have to read all of them again to know for sure if that's still the case or not. But I do know this time through, I'm especially enjoying the conflicts more than I did on my original read. Let's continue on. Chapter 54 resumes with Dalinar, and we see he is being rather reflective over everything that Yasna just pulled, and he's kind of trying to give her like some understanding, but at the same time, he did just have to spend a bunch of time trying to soothe over all the political turmoil she caused by stabbing another political figure in the throat. Very Dalinar move, Yasna, now that I think about it. But there is a conversation he has to have with Renarin about the vision that he had in his episode, and they're like, that could have been distorted by Odium, but still, it's worth it, let's see it. And we see Dalinar facing away from Odium with an arrow in his shard plate. And one of the conclusions through this is like, Odium will never agree to a contest of champions, and mainly because there's just like nothing for him to lose by waiting. Once again, their question is asked like, should we bond more corrupt Spren for the war effort? And then Renarin is asked like, who would you recommend? And he recommends R'lain, but we know how R'lain feels about that. This takes us to chapter 55, and we see that Syl is talking with Kaladin as he is feeding Teft, who's still, you know, and she is sad, which makes me still sad to say. This makes Kaladin realize, though, that she, for the first time, is processing the grief of losing the last person she was bonded to. So it's kind of that whole like message of like, sometimes it's okay to be sad because that's your body going through some stuff. He eventually leaves Teft with Debid and goes out and starts crawling along the outside of the tower, doing his Spider-Man thing with his powers, trying to figure out what exactly is going on with the Oath Gates, and he sees that the Parshendi are communicating about the Oath Gates through span reads. So he decides his mission is to steal a span read to help get the Oath Gates at least semi out of order. We are going to once again be covering chapter 56 and 57 because they're kind of that blend in the Parshendi, but we're going to be kicking it off with Venli. And we see that she is in the infirmary and actually is like ordering Kaladin's dad to help take care of Radiance and stuff like that. So a little bit of a character emotional potential in the future there. Also, she has begun looking for the nodes as well. But from here, we're going to cut to 8.5 years in the past. And we see from Eshonai's perspective that she is hanging out with the Dalinar. And he warns Eshonai of Gavalar, kind of like, just don't work with him. But that's not the focus of this because we actually cut to Venli's perspective very briefly as she goes off into a storm to break that gem. Everyone assumes she's going off to take mate form, which she's not, so cut that out. And instead, she comes back out of tune. And it takes several attempts to get her back attuned to the rhythms, and Eshonai's kind of like off-put by her new confident walk. But now we need to travel back to the present so that we can get to chapter 58. We must activate the vortex. I don't really got time for these games. Chapter 58. So this takes us to chapters 58 and 59, both of which follow our boy Kaladin. And I'm putting them together because, again, this is more of like a continued action sequence. And in hindsight, probably should have been doing this for more chapters. I'll do that more next time. You live and learn. Now, Kaladin is trying to make his way to the Span Reed hub. He's using his climbing abilities. Syl is making distractions for him. He's climbing through ventilation shafts. And eventually he gets there and does end up like messing up some span reads. So mission 1, semi-accomplished. But he is informed by Sibling that a node has been found by the Parshendi, and he has to follow a light. This is the beginning of chapter 59, all the way down to where Robanel is infusing with Pursuer on watch, and this leads to a fight! Yes, we have Kaladin fighting Pursuer, Pursuer taking advantage, Syl causing a distraction, Kaladin then tricking Pursuer to chase him, and amazingly, Kaladin ends up solving this fight by locking them in a room. He's then able to head on back to where Robanel is working, and he destroys a node. But Robanel then stabs Kaladin, forcing Kaladin to flee after like a brief exchange and stuff going on. But one of the nodes is destroyed. This takes us to chapter 60 and 61, and gamers, I'm happy to tell you that we are over halfway now, but this first chapter 60 follows Venli, who visits R'Laine and realizes, like, I'm really in line with this human sympathizer, and we might be wanting to work together. So, she goes to visit Robanel, who is in Dalinar's rooms, and while she's there, Mraize shows up with Lift as prisoner and gives them over as a gift, so Lift has been taken in. That's big sad. Venli then leaves and goes back to her own rooms where she tries to square the next ideal, but fails. And she realizes, like, yo, I just watched a human kid get carted away in a cage. I'm not winning over any ideals. I have been told by Potato, who's very into the mechanics of the magic systems in the Cosmere, that I must include the information here that life is revealed by Mraize to be powered by life light, which makes sense if you ask me. What a lucky name. Chapter 61, though, we pick up with Navani. And she is talking to Kaladin and letting him know, like, dude, just because you broke the node, not the worst outcome possible. It sucks that you had to do that, but it's not like the end of the world. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get you one of these lift gloves that we were working on, because Kaladin's powers, as you know, have been, like, seriously hamstrung. But Robanel invites her to Navani's own office that Robanel has claimed. Robanel, why are you going in their rooms and offices? That's like a huge pet peeve of mine. If I ever like have someone over and I walk in them in my bedroom, it's like, nope, get out. I hate that all the way. But there is also a sphere in this room that I think is half void light and half light, life light. There's like weird light conversations happening, and they even talk about how stormlight and void light can't be mixed, but Navani's like, I think you can with the right emulsifier, because she's a giant smart nerd. At the same time, when Robinell leaves Navani in her office, which Robinell is just making arrogant mistakes left and right, Navani ends up talking to Sibling again, and Sibling's like,
I might die.
Goblins, in between recording these chapters and the last chapter, I had my cats in the room, mistake one, and I opened a window and was trying to move a box in front of it so that Pips could perch up and look out. Something fell off the box that was heavy and metal, scared him, and so he leapt over my desk, landed on a cord, and broke my several $100 sound mixer, because where this is supposed to connect to the iPad I'm recording off of, that no longer is a thing. It was removed by paw. So I'll be opening this up this weekend with a soldering iron to see if I can get this operational again. So if it suddenly seems like the sound quality is different, it's because we're now recording off of my old backup recorder. Yay! Now is as good a time as any to promote my Patreon and say if you want to support us, you can just for $1 a month get all kinds of bonus content like chapters from my own writing and movie reviews with Kayla and I. But without any further ado, let's continue on into chapters 62 and 63. Chapter 62 picks up with Venli 8 years ago. We're just chunking those 6 months, and we see she has now got the war form. And Gavalar has made it clear that from over in the human part of Roshar, they want to establish like official diplomacy. In my opinion, like, humans kind of suck. Just keep doing your little parchment stuff. You got music and rhythms and forms. Why do you need us? We're gross. But anyway, I'm putting my own politics in them. And then the big sad is after the meeting is over, they meet up with their mom, Yaxlim, again, who is clearly like way further succumbing to the like memory loss issue she's facing. But there is a potential hope, because both her and Eshonai have also been approved to try to take on Warform. So, will that fix them? Who knows? Is that everything? It was a couple more minutes between me writing this out and me reciting it because of the incident that happened, so I'm trying to remember if I got to all the important points. This takes us to chapter 63, which is a Kaladin chapter. He wakes up from a nightmare, and you're like, oh no, is the psychology of Kaladin being compromised by these nightmares? But fortunately, he's been taking care of himself, eating his mental Wheaties, and he's actually kind of doing all right, because him and Syl are talking about the fact that, we both feel sadness sometime, and if we feel sadness, we're going to talk to each other, and that's good. And Syl is even remembering more of her past, and she's able to like talk about how like I can change, you can change can be good, we're all great people. David shows up though and is able to give Kaladin the lifting glove. He then has a conversation with Navani where she instructs him on how to use it, and Kaladin really is going through a video game in this book. Like, he's stuck in this place where he's going through these different floors, fighting guards and occasional boss fights, while his powers have been depowered, which happens in so many games like Prototype, for example, and now he gets an upgrade after a boss fight. This is a video game book for Kaladin, and also, at chapter 63, I'm officially remembering just how much we had to deal with this tower in the book, and it's like, yeah, that was the big ooh of Rhythm of War. So much tower setting. For chapters 64 and 65, we have the absolutely lethal combo of Jasnah and Navani. We see Jasnah is actually going out into the battlefield and donning shard plate. And this is kind of like a test of war versus the experience she's like read about, and then the experience of, mass death. And to her, she's like, wow, studying didn't do this justice. And, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that even my like expectation of how much more severe war would be versus reading about war does not do it justice. And so, great character moment. It's actually nice, but it's also one of those things where she goes through it and you're like, agreed, probably, from my not knowledge. But then we also see she meets with Wit, who talks to her about her experience and also reveals that something called the Sleepless, again a Cosmere thing, stole their secrets. And he starts spilling the beans on the ghost Ghostbloods. Then we move on to chapter 65 following Navani, where she is mixing all these lights, trying to get these new scientific revelations, and it turns out that Towerlight is not exactly friendly with a whole lot of other lights, and she knows that Gavalar, due to what that sphere he had in the beginning was likely working on something similar. Rabanil comes in and is really impressed with the amount of progress Navani has made, where previously she was like deliberately slow. The thirst for knowledge has driven her to really work hard here. And they come up with an idea of anti-light. And also there's a character in here called Esu, and Rabanel is like, that's my daughter who's insane. Jesus Christ. Now for chapters 66 and 67, we are following Dalinar and Venli perspectively. For Dalinar, he goes to have a chat with Taravangian, who is prisoner. Taravangian. Wow. And Taravangian's response is along the lines of, old Dalinar would agree with me, actually, which, if you know anything about Dalinar now, is not an effective argument. And when they end up leaving Szeth, even Szeth, who's not someone who gives lots of opinions.
That guy sucks.
And you know when you piss off Szeth, who is so peaceful and so chill. Not really, but like, you know what I mean? He's like a monk type figure. You know you messed up. So I really like this chapter just for like, it's kind of repeating a lot of stuff we already know, but at the same time, it gives us one moment of Szeth, and the Szeth-Dalinar relationship that's developing is like not something I saw coming, but low-key love. So great chapter 66. Then on to chapter 67, where we see Venli, not 8 years ago, but in modern times, is going off to practice some of her power stuff, and she finds out that she can use void light within the tower. Obviously, the security systems are stopping like other versions of light going on, but she can use the light of the void. And she manages to achieve a pure tone. She then sees like visions of the past, where she sees her ancient people, the Dawn Singers, able to shape Earth with their... And okay, I'm going to go ahead and say, if you're confused, even if you've read the book by all of this stuff, I think we're kind of supposed to be, because they're not human. We're witnessing not only a culture different from ours, but people who perceive and understand the world in a different way. There is an incredibly effective alienness to everything Parshendi. We see in chapter 68 that Ashone, 8 years in the past, which I did not put on the board, but this is in the past again, is taking her mother out to take the war form to hopefully cure her in a high storm. The only reason she's there is to provide a shield to protect her, because, you know, these storms, mad dangerous. But the problem is this fails, and instead she ends up taking on the war form as well as a whole new party of people, and they go back and say, hey, these are our new form, we all need to unify to present a stronger front to the humans that are coming more and more into our lives. So we're seeing the setup for the war that initiated this entire series really begin to cement with the bad actors in the Parshendi here, though there are mysteries still to be figured out. Chapter 69, Giggity follows Navani, who is drawing parallels with how like music relates to math, with the light work she has going on, and she proposes the idea to sibling, the Tower Sprin, that she should bond a non-human who is honorable, perhaps, because she's been very against the idea of bonding before. At this point, she lets Navani know there is a node at a well in a certain location. Unfortunately, the Parshendi are also aware of it, so Navani does the whole, let's put the Batman call out, let's get in touch with Kaladin. And for chapter 70, we're going to be picking up with a Kaladin-Navani-Kaladin combo, because Kaladin gets the warning call and is on his way, but Navani finds out rather quickly, because she tries to go stall, that this is a trap, and most likely her conversations with Sibling have been being eavesdropped on this entire time. Oh, so we cut back to Kaladin, who is immediately engaged by Pursuer, but comes out on top, partially due to, you know, having the whole glove you must acquit because it can lift power. But then he engages Leshwi in a duel, but figures out rather quickly it is only a distraction, and dives down into a well to destroy the node that Rabanel is working on. Though, they try to trap him in there, and despite Syl being now separated from him, you can't trap Cali Boy. You close that door on that one guy? That's not going to work on him. So he manages to actually leap on out of a window into an ongoing storm. And that, I've always just kind of pictured the Luke Skywalker in Empire Strikes Back, like, hanging thing. But this takes us to chapter what Dalinar finally asks a very valuable question. What what's happening on the tower over there? And my guy, it's chapter 71. Okay, whatever.
He is getting communications from the tower with Navani's passphrase included, so there's like good reason for him to be accepting stuff. But how Odium's forces got her passcode is never explained.
But through his bond with the Stormfather, in a vision, he manages to travel with the Stormfather through a storm. But when he arrives at the tower, he sees at first everything looks kind of okay. Oh, that's Kaladin. Kaladin informs him on what's going on and wakes up from the vision. He's like, I have to master being a bondsmith so that we can properly fight back. Yes, also, you should do more than that. Back in chapter 72, we are following Navani, who is in her office. Well, it's kind of Rubinel's office now. We've been eavesdropping on your conversations with the tower from the start. From here, we have the Interludes, which this is probably the most interesting Interludes we get so far. Partially because I'm super partial to Szeth, and he's in 2 of them. So, in 3-1 for the Interludes, Szeth is talking with Nightblood about his past, but then a high sprint appears to him. Get higher, like further ideals. Also, don't just follow Dalinar's view of like what is right and wrong blindly. Do your own stuff. And then Szeth sees that Taravangian requested an Oathstone. From here, we cut to Cheery Cheery. The only important thing in this second interlude, recent it foot. And then in the third interlude, Taravangian's having a dumb day, but there's notes from his smart day. Szeth appears. Why did you ask for an oath stone? And Taravangian replies, Odium fears Nightblood. You should give Nightblood to Dalinar. And also your dad's dead. What the hell? Szeth doesn't believe him, thinks it's more manipulation, and heads on out. End of Interludes. Now we're going back to a solo covering chapter for 73 because a lot is happening important with Venli. And I'm going to be real with you. Venli chapter is my least favorite. I'm not saying they're objectively bad. Put down your pitchforks, Cosmere fans. I'm just saying, personally, they are not my favorite. Okay, so 8 years ago, we see that the place that Venli is living is more crowded. Someone named Ulim is like, you know nothing of the past. All of your decisions are made out of ignorance. Later on, she decides, I need to listen to this guy. She learns that when one of the Unmade was connected to the Parshindi, the singers lost a part of themselves when the humans captured that Unmade. Specifically, the name of the Unmade was Bo Ado Mishram. When she goes home, we see that her mother is really far gone, and she starts singing one of the basic songs to her to help her mother remember, and she comes to the conclusion that she needs to manipulate the humans and to bringing some of the listeners, some of her people, to Kolar, and that will scare her people into taking on the power forms. So this is important because, as you can see, it's the final bit of information that really starts clicking into place how we got where we are in present day. For chapter 74, we are going to be following Venli, who is on her way to the infirmary with Lorraine. Now, fights are breaking out around the tower because of the clash that happened with Kaladin. Word has spread amongst the humans that there is a fight to be had. And once they get to there, there's a discussion of maps about how to get out of the tower. But Lirin, Kaladin's father, is kind of taking his ideology to an extreme because he sees someone honoring Kaladin with something they're wearing. Ugh, this is only going to bring more death. Dude! I know pacifism, time and place, right? When we're in the middle of a takeover and fight, maybe's not the time. This takes us to chapter 75, where we start with Adolin, and he is taken to a top of a city wall where he sees a whole lot of Deadeyes have arrived, and the idea is put forth that they are there to witness some upcoming justice because Shadesmar and stuff is weird. We cut to Shallan, where we finally get some answers about Pattern's lies and the spy because, well, at first she's buried super deep because she doesn't want to come out and is letting Veil and Radiant handle it because she's so hurt about this revelation. Eventually, once they start interrogating, basically just actually getting a confession from Pattern, she does re-emerge. And there are missing memories confirmed here. Pattern doesn't remember her mother's death, and they definitely met Shallan before the time on the boat. It's also kind of confirmed that Pattern was just misunderstanding, being a bit of an idiot that caused all of this to happen. There is no great betrayal, and you can have two thoughts on this. It's brilliant from Sanderson in a structural standpoint to end, obviously, following Adolin Shallan a while ago, right when this revelation came out, because it puts this sense of dread in you about Spren lying and not being loyal to the people who are above them. But then that's kind of undone when it turns out it was more of a miscommunication and pattern trying to do something to resolve conflict, working within both the physical and cognitive realms. So you can also say it's a undoing, but I think because it was actually done so well, it really works. So for me, it actually kind of turns out to be a win. And remember, all of this is kind of happening because Shallan is playing double, triple agent with things, and it's tying back to Mizraine back in the real world, who we've seen go after Lift, and it's about the Sons of Honor, which is like tangentially related to her hunting the Ghostbloods. It's a spy thriller within the Stormlight archive. Chapter 76 is a Navani chapter, and it is a big deal because this has implications for a whole lot of the Cosmere as a whole going forward, and not just the Stormlight archive. But Navani is trying to get in touch with Sibling, who's just not talking. Robanil comes in and they start talking about their research, and they keep like diving into the parallels of sound and light, like music and math and rhythm and tone. Pays off in this moment because after doing some more theorizing about Towerlight and two rhythms, Navani and Robanil start singing together, and they manage to make, by combining the rhythms, I think, of Void Light and Stormlight to come together into a sphere, and then that is identified as what the result is the rhythm of war. Apparently powerful enough to potentially kill gods.
Another MVP correction from Potato. I made a mistake here. What they come up with is Warlight, which is something that disproves Robanel's theory that Stormlight is the opposite of Void Light, and actually leads Navani to coming up with the theory of anti-light, which is the thing that potentially has the power to kill gods. There are many different kinds of light. It gets confusing, but this is what just happened here.
I want to make a quick note about all of this conflict going on at Urithiru and this tower, because it can seem a bit confusing. It's why is there an occupation that's like semi-violent but not? How is this situation developed to be in this odd stalemate? I think the best parallel we could look at is like in post-World Wars, there was a scramble for scientists and research. Well, what if all those scientists, instead of working in the heart of the United States, or in the heart of the Axis powers, were instead in a remote island in the middle of the ocean? If one of the forces took that over, they wouldn't then go through and purge and fully stop everyone's work. They would instead make everyone work for them, because the scramble is for the big bad weapon, hence the parallel I drew earlier. That is essentially what's happening here, where scientists want to science. That's a universal thing in the scientific community today, where we're even able to work with countries we don't exactly have friendly relationships with scientifically, because the thirst for knowledge and progression of mankind supersumes, that's not the right word, everything. And so that is kind of the vibe that's been happening here, and also why Navani just hasn't been for what she's been doing by the Parshendi. She's too valuable. Chapter 77 is a Venli one from 7.5 years ago, and if you are a super Cosmere fan, you know exactly what that means. It's the signing of the peace treaty, and we see that Venli is on a secret mission with Ulim to try and locate Voidspren. And there's a problem with their overall plan so far, because despite coming to see the humans, people aren't really intimidated, and they're not down for seeking the powerful forms that Venli is interested in. So Venli, through some circumstances where she's separated from Ulim, and one of their agents is like off-planet, Cosmere stuff, she is in the custody of Nails, one of the heralds. And he asks how many Voidspren are there, and she's like, 1. Gavalar, he's going to betray you, kill all the listeners. There's this guy I know, Zeth, who has an honorable ladies for hire. And by the way, if you want to like motivate your people to go for powerful forms, war. And so I'm referring to this all as the stupid arms race. Not that it doesn't make sense from, like, the perspective of these characters and their motivations, but from the perspective of it could have so easily been avoided. And it's just a few bad actors that end up making all of this happen, but such is, if you look at how huge wars have started in history, the way of things. We aren't smart a lot of the time, and selfish and blind, and this is kind of a plot line that we can see those same flaws exist within the Parshendi. And even in some ways, we're introduced to them by more human figures. 78 is going to be another big one because we are going Shallan, Adolin, Shallan. And we're going to start with Shallan, who is deciding to go ahead and contact Mraize through the queue. We find out that Pattern has been talking with Wit through the queue, but that has not been, let's just say, an A to B call. There have been some eavesdropping. Now, Vale takes control through the call and reiterates a question that probably kind of started this whole windy thing that has not been answered yet. Who killed Lele? Sadeas? Who did? Remember the poisoning that happened? All that yesterday ago, at least in the real world time for me. But she tells Mraize that Restairs is not there, which bothers him. He asks after Shallan's mental health, and she actually is kind of honest. Not great, Bob. But at this point, they're interrupted by shouting, and we cut to Adolin, who, being interrogated, but finds out some integral information that Honor Spren kind of think that whatever they do is honorable because they are Honor Spren. So really, Honor Spren, if you take their head and put it up their own butt, it's an accurate representation of an Honor Spren. And there's actually a judge that arrives, and we see that it's a human judge, to everyone's surprise. They're like, wait, this is supposed to be like a Spren trial. Why is Kelek here, who is a herald and is Restairs? So and Shallan realizes that Mraize may have sent her here wanting her to kill a herald. And, oopsie. Oh, we are in striking range of the conclusion. Let's keep it going. All right, we are at 79, where we're picking up with R'hllane. He is mooking his way through the tower, and no one's really treating him great. Basically, if you don't know R'hllane, you kind of treat him like ass because he's known as a human sympathizer, but to the humans, he's still a Parshendi because humans suck. So he ends up going into the infirmary again, and Lirin is like, hey, we're not going to be able to hide much longer. People have seen us. Stuff's going to come bad. And he even ends up talking to Kaladin's mom, too. And Kaladin's mom is actually more reasonable than Lirin about the whole Kaladin fighting situation and honestly everything going on. And if you want to indicate an older guy who's married is wrong in fiction, you make his wife disagree with him. That's just a rule of fiction. We all know that. They're looking at some maps. There's some information about some people on a nearby place that, ooh, what's that? Someone comes in, I think it's Debid. Poof, hey, Kaladin, he's sleeping again, and we can't wake him. And it's kind of funny how much Kaladin's sleeping during this whole siege in context of the nightmare stuff being inflicted on him by Odium. Makes complete sense. But without context, that's actually where Chapter 80 picks up, because we jump into Kaladin's nightmare, all the horrible things we've seen before coming in from Odium, trying to break him psychologically, but Wit shows up. Because Wit sits down with Kaladin, and they actually have a story time. Because Wit. And Wit tells him a story that is a not-so-subtle message to Kaladin that stop with these expectations of yourself. He's being too hard on himself, and importantly at the end, Wit is like, doofus, stuff's gonna get hard. It's gonna get hard, and life's gonna suck, and then it'll get better. And then it'll get hard again. And then it'll get better again. That is the cycle of life. And as long as you remember the sun will break through the clouds, then you can overcome anything. Just take it easier on yourself, my guy. Cool. And it helps him a lot. But for 81, we cut to 7 years ago. Basically, bunch of Parshendi are in war form. Bunch of Alethi war camps out on the horizon. Things looking bad in terms of, like, you know, if you don't like war. But from there, we cut to Venli, and she is telling her closest disciples with the Void Spren she has this time will be in control of the Spren, not the other way around. Now, in Chapter 82, we are picking up with Shallan before jumping into Adolin. First, Shallan is obviously on the phone, Mraize. You did not tell me this is a herald. I can't work with you, because this implies, like, you just... But she's like, whoa, 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 whoa. open the cube. She opens the cube, and guess what? There is a knife in there that will be able to capture the soul of the Herald. You can Pokemon ball that hoe, and the leader of the Ghostbloods has a similar condition to him, and if you manage to get the leader of the Ghostbloods this soul so he can study it, you will become a full-on Ghostblood, and then, because the judge of the trial will be taken out of the equation, you can use your light weaving, assume the role, and actually free your boyfriend. Win, 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 win. How about now? But we cut to Adolin, who is talking with Kellic, and Kellic's like, dude, you are going to lose this trial. Oh my god, no. Absolutely not. And that's pretty much the end of that chapter. We cut to 83 at this point, and Venli, a lot of guilt, because as we've seen through, she's honestly having her own sad boy time. Yeah, you thought that was gone. It was not. See how gracefully I pulled that in? Anyway, how did that get taken? Oh my god. But she, through some more like scientific study stuff from everything we've been learning in this tower, is able to reduplicate the stone changing stuff she saw her ancestors do. Holy crap. And frankly, maybe one of the most powerful things we've seen so far in Stormlight Archive, being able to shape matter. But she and her Leshwi friend re-emphasize that it's their duty to survive Rabbanil so that they can, like, it's complicated, but like everything we've been talking about building up to the point where it's like, we have to survive this person's ambition. That's why we are with them and close to them. And then she goes to see Kaladin's dad again, Lirin, and he's talking about turning over Kaladin. I will come into the book and kill you, Lirin. Worst dad in a book that has Dalinar. I know he's like a better dad now, but like back in the day, terrible. But their conclusion is like, hey, instead of all of that stupidness, remember how there's another Radiant here? Why don't we just go get Lift? And so they head on down to Lift's cell with R'lain, and she uses her new stone shaping power to free Lift from the back of her cell. And then she turns to everyone, you know how you just saw me warp matter? I need you all to be really cool about that. And they are. And so Lift is freed. Oh, I can taste the end. It is so close. 84 picks up with Navani, who is going full force nerding harder than she has ever before on research. And this focus is being used to create new weapons from her recent discoveries that she's planning on like hiding throughout the tower so that when an uprising comes, people are going to be like, oh, what's that box? It's got like broken crap in it. And then the people who are in the know are like, actually, it's the answers. Is it time for us to open it now? Finally, in the middle of chapter 84? No, that would mess up the flow of the video. Gosh, don't be ridiculous. Anyway, they're manufacturing more and more Warlight with Robanel, and they come up with an idea to possibly fix Split Spren. From here, chapter 86, we cut to the Bid's perspective, and well, first of all, just a big revelation in all of this. Just was quiet for being quiet's sake. Wasn't a mute for any medical reason. Anyway, they take Lift to Kaladin, who heals him with great effort. And just as like a little extra to Kaladin's father, yeah, we don't need your surgery. It is actually outdated medical BS. That's right. We have better healthcare now in Roshar. And how dare you talk about turning your son over, who has done so much? Just ew. And yeah, screw your primitive, I have to cut people open practices. We're on like that Star Trek level shit now, and people are going to be getting fully healed left, like, up, down. Said that wrong. And also Teft is healed by Lift as well. And at the end of this, Kaladin begins to wake up. Chapter 87, 1 year and a half ago, we are with Venli, who is determined to capture Storm Spren, and we also see that her mother is deteriorated to the point where she needs like a full-time caretaker. Honestly, though, with this like time jump, I'm just surprised she's alive and functional. I don't mean to sound callous and mean, but like, this started 7-8 years ago. Hello, everyone who's made it this far into the video. Thank you, first and foremost. Like, amazing. I appreciate you all. But I just wanted to quickly note, you probably noticed in my last chapter try coverage that I had chapters 84, 86, 87, and somehow left out 85. That's what we call and oopsie poopsie. So when I said I was talking about Chapter 86, I was talking about Chapter 85. My bad. And same when I said 87, I meant 86. So now, let's jump into the actual Chapter 87. The true Chapter 87 begins with Adolin, because he has his trial. That's right, we're doing the Chung Chung Law & Order Sprint Edition. And the testimonies begin and essentially establish, hey, want to know a shocking fact? Humans suck. A lot. In fact, so much, we might want to bond with the Fused. Go the other direction. Wouldn't that be fun? But during all this testimony, Notum comes up and rebels against clearly what was like supposed to be planted testimony, and instead says, honor lives as long as it's in men's hearts! Which, you know, thank you. This trial has become bigger than just him, because it could even dictate the direction the Spren go in the future. Holy smokes. From here we cut to Shallan, who we are seeing fake hurt herself so that she can be brought where they store Stormlight so that she can heal herself. She steals a sphere that is full of Stormlight. Oh my god, is she gonna go along with the Ghostblood plan? We shall see. Now we're in 88, and now we are in 1.5 years ago, where Eshene sees that they're going to try and experiment with her mother to try and make her change forms to save her. Emotional loss from her, and she walks out into the shattered plains and sees a chasm fiend, and then a mysterious light, and it follows her home. Is it a UFO? Then we get to Chapter 89, where we are following Navani. Let's double check this. 87, 88, 89. Didn't mess it up this time. Navani is changing sand from black to white with investiture. Yes, black to white, not white to black, whatever. And she is really impressive in doing this. And Rubenel comes back. Dude, you're a real scholar. Like, I know we aren't, like, best friends, but it's been a pleasure to work with you, and I'm giving you the nickname Voices of Light. But she can also, because she's getting better at, like, understanding the Parshandy rhythms, knows that this is not just about taking down Odium. There are still lies that she is being told. She finally does manage to get in contact with Sibling later on, after she is left with just some researchers, but she figures out that you can make opposite vibrations with the Stormlight and all of the sciencey stuff we've been talking about. And actually, I think that's how AirPods work. You know how like they do the noise cancellation where they hear what's outside and they make like an opposite vibration and it cancels it out, so you don't hear it? I think Apple is doing what Navani's doing. I could very well be wrong. Chapter 90, we get back to the trial, and we see Adolin is now taking the stand on the second day, but he's not even being allowed to get his words out. There's actually like a real tactic in courts that when the other side is testifying, you object as much as you can to like throw them off. This is being taken to an extreme, where like the actual audience is just like, boo! And so there's no honorable intentions here. And Adolin kind of just becomes resigned to the fact that, like, we were doomed from the beginning. Here we cut to Shallan, who actually is talking with Adolin in court. And she's like, I can break you out, bruv. Once they find you guilty, don't even worry about it. Why am I? No, the Parshandy are British. Damn it. Anyway, he's like, don't free me. Don't. They are not being honorable. They claim to be honor spren. Let me stay here and rub their face in the fact that they behaved dishonorably without question. But at this point, Shallan's internal minds are arguing about what to do. Should they do the Ghostblood plan? Should they let Adolin have his own agency and end up in a cage? Well, Formless takes over, which is the big bad of all of Shallan's internal personalities. And they tell Adolin, you might be surprised by what the judge decides. Which is to tell us, the audience, or at least imply that they are going to be taking the place of the judge. This takes us to Chapter 91, which is actually Teft's perspective, who's clean from fire moss, the moss drug, and we learn because a honor spren shows up called Paramore. That's a band. Hold up. Fendora. Kind of not even close, that his bond with Syl, it's intact. Like, she's not around. Remember, she got separated in the fight, but don't worry, dude, you'll be all right. And because this is the mental health crew, they're not, like, jumping into action without thinking, and instead, they're all like, we need to take our time. We're going to plan. All right. We're also going to try and get in touch with Navani, who is just isolating herself in research. And this will be okay, fellas. And we see Teft at the end, who has been like struggling with mental health this whole book. Even as a small moment of smiling, things can be all right, even though we're in a tower that's besieged by an enemy invading force and we could be killed at any given second. And many of the people who are supposed to be our loved ones are like betraying us. It's fine. It's fine. I'm actually feeling pretty good. 92, we pick up with Venli, and she is just feeling all of the shame for everything she's done. And yes, I agree. That is my comment there. But she receives the information about the group on the edge of the Shattered Plains that we learned about before, and she theorizes that they are listeners that left before the Everstone. So she snatches up a map and just starts a-running. But from here, we cut to chapter 93, and we start following Shallan. And it seems as formless, she is indeed heading over to kill Kellic. But internally, there is all of this turmoil happening. It does straight up remind me of the episode of South Park where Cartman is like fighting his internal demon that's like, no, you can't kill your mother. And he's like, she's my mom, I deserve to kill her.
It's more important I live the way I want. She isn't an object you can own, she's a human being. She isn't an object I can own, she's a human being. She's making you suffer!
That's Shallan's whole vibe this entire chapter, and it gets weirder. While she's going through this, finally Radiant just decides to come out with the just revelation that I killed Lele, Sadius. That was me. Sorry, I probably should have said that earlier because it caused a lot of tension, but I was nervous. And Shallan then remembers, comes to the revelation that she killed her own parents. Like, there's just a storm happening, and she didn't originally bond Pattern, but instead was bonded to Testament, who she then also killed. And now she like integrates Veil into her psyche. You think the storm in Stormlight Archive is about the big storms in the sky. No. Actually, it's about what's going on in Shallan's head right now. I'm not going to kill him, actually. Instead, let's leave. And as she turns to leave, guess what? He comes in. He's like, oh. Hi. I was going to kill you, but I'm not anymore. We're Gucci. Don't worry about it. Just go easy on Adolin. Weird situation. But she even admits that the Ghostbloods sent her. But as she seems to finally be getting cool with Kellic, a bunch of honor sprint kick open the door. You're interfering with the trial by talking to the judge. And to their point, 100% correct. Genuinely, yeah, she is. That's not allowed. You can't be like Adolin's boo and then go talk to the judge on his behalf outside of the court and trial. So the judge gets sequestered. We have a legal drama, a spy thriller, a siege, and then whatever the hell Dalinar is doing, all in this book, as well as a history lesson on the Parshindi. I get why it's 400,000 over now. Jesus. Chapter 94, we have Adolin in the last day of his trial. And his new judge is an ancient honor spren who just hates humanity. Like, this is the worst way things could have gone. His name, not it. See, I'm a human. I did a bad thing. His name is Sakir, and he tries to like testify on behalf of Maya, Adolin's spren, and be like, you are someone who is taking advantage of this Deadeye. In fact, her life is torment in hell, just like so many other spren because of humanity. You're awful. You broke the bonds. But then Maya in her chair is like, no, I disagree. And she starts speaking, and she actually tells everyone, hey, it wasn't humans that broke the bonds. It was mutual. I would drop the mic, but I already broke some sound equipment today. Not risking that again. And this is such a shocking revelation that no verdict is reached, and instead, everyone just scatters and leaves Adolin and the humans alone in the courtroom. And then Blended comes up, and this character, you know, from earlier. I'm sure I mentioned them at some point in this 2 days of talking about Rhythm of War. And they basically let Adolin know it's not the best outcome you could have wanted, but at least we're not going to be working with the Fused anytime soon. Now we cut to Venli, just like a little bit over a year ago, and she sees that her people are marching on the battlefield, and they're just like consumed by their new form. Oh my god, horrors of war. What have I done? this is bad. And then she starts fleeing, and she actually gets accosted by a human on the battlefield at some point, but he lets her go and she asks for mercy. And then she even sees her sister fall into a chasm. Oh no, I don't care. And as a little bell go off, oh, I'm so actually not in control of myself anymore because of this new form. My bad, guys. I know I did this whole thing, and I actually don't really, it's not even me. I just took all the information and advice from Ulam, and I've kind of just been a coward and a liar. That takes us to chapter 97, which is a Navani chapter that is real important and has a lot of payoff if you've been paying attention and if I've communicated things well. Let's hope. So, you know how I said she's gone super nerd mode to the point where she is just focusing mega hardcore? Well, now she's taken it Super Saiyan super nerd mode because she's not sleeping, she is not eating, and as a result, she successfully manages to push void light out of a sphere. That's really impressive and important. And what Sanderson is trying to tell you here by this being accomplished this way is you do need to not sleep, not eat, and just study and work and grind. Your 9 to 5, make it 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm kidding, kind of, but it worked for Navani. Now, she does fail to hide this discovery from Raboniel, but Raboniel, after a bit of a clash, an explosion, and hurting herself with other Void Light tricks with Navani, just uses this to create anti-Void Light, put it in a knife in a way that if you use it will not take in, but instead push out, and kills her own daughter. And this is where the big reveal of everything happens, and I want to state it very clearly. She has developed a way to kill Sprin. She wants to end the war not by finding a way to defeat Radiance, not by finding a super weapon that can brah all at once, not even, yes, Navani was right detecting her lie before by taking out Odium, but instead by killing Sprin so they cannot bond Radiance in the first place. Where is Syl? Keep her secret. Keep her safe. This is going to take us to the Interludes. That's right, we're about to get into the final part, motherfuckers. Oh my god! In the first interlude at the end of part 4, Lirin is kind of put in his place by his wife because she's like, dude, if there's going to be violence, your son's the one to do it because he's doing it the best of anybody in terms of ethically, and he's actually an amazing guy. And she takes him to all these different people whose lives Kaladin is impacted because of everything that's been going on in the book. Kaladin's amazing. Why wouldn't you love Kaladin, you piece of shit? And so absolutely kind of very satisfying to see someone's wife literally walk them around and here's why you're an idiot. The next interlude is a kid and their father going together to the Radiance because it's the time for the climax. You know what it is. And then the third one is the most important one by far because this is where we get Taravangian, who he has visions of Odium. And his new revelation is whoa, what if I have a vision with Odium and I get Zeth here with Nightblood at the same time? Zha-Anat, which is that unmade he's been working with, can you get Odium here? Because he senses that this unmade is also not super down with Odium, even though they're made from a splinter of Odium. Who knows? I can get Odium's attention to you by putting 2 corrupt Sprin in spheres with you here. Rest is on you, dog. That's the end of the interludes. Now it's time for you to put on your seatbelts. I'm dead-ass serious because we're kicking off into the climax. So, Chapter 8 is going to be with Dalinar, where he has just won big battles, and it looks like their whole campaign's going to be a victory. So he's feeling good, and he's like, you know what? That Herald Ishar, let me talk to him. And for some reason, every single time, even if it's on a diplomatic or peaceful mission, Dalinar wants to talk to someone, it gives the energy of Peter Griffin in that one episode loading a shotgun.
I just want to talk to him.
Why do you have a shotgun?
I just want to talk to him.
Dad, this is ridiculous.
I just want to talk to him. I just want to talk to him.
He could be on his way to see his wife on their honeymoon, and he'd just have that same-ass energy. But Chapter 99, Yasna is having a bunch of thoughts about how they could win if Odium's seeing the future, and Wit's well, that's about how they win, and this person wants to win in a way that makes them seem super intelligent, so perhaps there are ways we... Anyway, the real takeaway from all of this is that Wit tells Yasna that he is the one who is not bound. And then we get get to chapter 100, where Kaladin wakes up from that nightmare we saw him in, because Kaladin, I cannot stress this enough, is sleeping a lot of this book, and he is warned by Sibling, the Sprint of the Tower, which is just near dead, that the final node has been found, and he needs to send Relaine to Navani, because it'd be too obvious what's about to happen if he just said, send Relaine to me. So he also agrees with Teft and everyone else that after he does what he can, they need to focus on escaping the tower if things go poorly with just as many radiants as possible. I kicked that ass. 101. We see that Dalinar is having a meeting with rulers. Hey, how can we help the tower? Open up right next to it with the perpendicularity, and blam! But there's not really like immediate action taken here. And Dalinar instead is like, hey, I'm going to Takar to meet with this herald, and that's the priority right now. Though, after this meeting is over, he goes up to Yasna, hands her a finished copy of his book, Oathbringer. She is expressing some insecurities about taking on a leadership role, because obviously she's classed with Dalinar a little bit, but answering that question, Dalinar insists that she kind of underwrite the book, because being a beta reader seems like something Yasna would be very good at. This takes us to 102, which is a Venli perspective, and we see she is about to go through an oath gate and be like, alright, I'm out E5000, but it's broken because someone has taken the one key mechanism sword that could make it operate. So instead, she's like, you know what? I'm finding Kaladin, I'm finding his family, and I'm getting them out of here. So she decides not to be a coward. And then we move on to Navani's perspective, because she is feeling terrible about developing this technology and handing it on over to the enemy. And in my opinion, she's been great this whole book. She fumbled right before the end zone, though. But Moash arrives, and he's about to kill Navani, but instead, Rubinail is like, hey, you should kill Kaladin first, but like in a more manipulative way, and gives Moash like some of the things that Navani's been developing. But after he's gone, Navani realizes that the dagger that Rubinail used to kill her daughter is still there and has some juice left. Then we cut to Kaladin, who reunites with Syl, and god damn it, Sanderson, I have been waiting for this reunification for a bit now, and way to make me feel horrible about it, because we know what threat lingers. Now I don't want them together. But Kaladin arrives at the final location of the node with like a whole bunch of people and like a Spider-Man we're together moment with like the casual people of the tower, and finds Pursuer, who streaks towards them to begin a fight. Chapter 103. And remember how I said buckle up? I meant that because emotionally, we are very close to dangerous territory, and things are about to get teary-eyed in here, possibly. We pick up with Teft, who is sneaking into the Radiant Infirmary, and he's like, all right, we're gonna go. Moash is here. Yes, Moash has been lying in wait and immediately stabs Lift in the leg. Things are looking bad. We cut to Kaladin, who is confident in his fight. He's tricking the Pursuer and like making them take on multiple forms, cutting through, like they had a 3 limit from like the first fight they had, and we're getting to that final form. Once we cut back in chapter 4 to Teft, we see Moash kills an unconscious Radiant. Yep. One of the ones in the infirmary is just unconscious. He just kills him just to with people. There's a reason. It's not even the worst thing he does here. Then Moash takes out the dagger designed by Navani and manages to kill both the Honor Sprend and Teft. He then takes that body out after Kaladin beats the Pursuer and chases them off, and leaves the body for Kaladin to grieve. He also then hands over Kaladin's father to Lazen. I want to call him Lazel, but that's not right. Lazane, and says that if Kaladin manages to recover from his grief, kill his father. Kaladin, you have 2 options left. Unalive yourself or join me. When Cosmere fans say Moash, they have good reason for saying that. And that was a bit of a Debbie Downer. And it's time to finally show you what's in this thing, because we need to just have a moment to process that, reflect on how it impacts all the themes of this book, and most importantly, enter the code. If you've noticed, this is a puzzle. And what could the answer be to unlock it? Well, what did Wit say to always look forward to? That would be the future. I did realize I just set this code to open for a secret, and I was like, this is going to be cool for the video, but I just put it in, and you probably can't even like really read the words, but it says future now. And what is inside? I may have kind of overhyped this a little bit. It's the first ever D&D mini I ever painted. It's a little ranger. Focus, please. Focus on that guy right there. Thank you. The little ranger I painted when I was like 10 or 11 for my first D&D campaign. That's really cute, right? It helps numb the pain. Jesus Christ, Sanderson. From here, though, ending chapter 105, we cut to Navani, who is going to the final broken node, I believe, and traps Robinil using a pain-reel trap. And we do know that the final node is destroyed, and at this point, the fate of Sibling is unknown. Chapter 106, we pick up with Venli, but I wrote it in blue for a reason. This is really Kaladin's, like, purpose and perspective. Just, I don't know, we're taking in his greatness in this moment from another view, and it does jump to his perspective later on. But Venli watches as Kaladin sees the options that Moash presents and decides, I'm gonna go with option C, Captain, because he, that pursuer person he reduced back to the last form of, like, Lazil or whatever it is, ties the head to the ceiling, the body down.
Libra, a strange man will drop into your life.
And then the Fuse, who's holding his father, is like, I'm a run, bet, and chases after him, gets to the top of the tower, and the Fuse just like throws his father, and Kaladin jumps after him despite all of his powers being so limited and unable to fly now. Cut to Navani, who takes the dagger and stabs Robinil. But when she does that, she gets stabbed, and just when you thought he couldn't possibly do more stuff to piss you off, it's revealed to be Moash. But as he comes for Navani, who's now running away, Robinil stabs him and drains his Stormlight, because, like, scientists protect scientists. You know, even if you just stab me, I'm gonna protect you, because this guy, he sucks. Navani reaches the crystal pillar and touches it, going, what, sibling, what? Oh, I'm hearing the rhythms of war. Title card. Now we cut to Dalinar. We're in 107 deeply by now, and he is begging the Stormfather to help Kaladin. Kaladin has let go of Syl on his descent down, and it just seems to be completely accepting death at this point. But the Stormfather does intervene and actually gives Kaladin an opportunity to say the next ideal, but Kaladin just, no, I wouldn't believe it. I give up. But you notice this little bit here. Dalinar convinces the Stormfather to give Kaladin a vision. Meanwhile, Venli is watching as Lizin's troops move in to slaughter the humans that are just unarmed, and we're witnessing everything that's happening. And Leshwi is like, that's unfortunate, let's move on. But Venli reveals her status as a Radiant. The 108 picks up with Kaladin, who in this vision is back in Amaram's army. Remember all of that like a million words ago? Anyway, he is remembering a day where Tien was brave and went out with soldiers, and the vision kind of falls away, and he just starts to have a conversation with what seems to be his brother's spirit through the Stormfather. And Tien reminds him our time together is what matters, helping each other against the darkness, kind of taking everything he's learned and repackaging it in a more direct emotional consumer way instead of Wit just telling him a story in a dream. And it ends with him giving a wooden horse. After the vision goes away, though, Kaladin comes back to his body because I guess he was, I don't know, okay, debate with me here, guys. Was he asleep in this vision? I don't know. But he wakes up, grabs Syl's hand, and they say the words of the next ideal. But we're going to cut to 109 here, where we go to Venli, who is taking up with Leshwi against the Pursuer's people. We have Parshendi on Parshendi violence, and we cut from there to Navani, who is desperate as Moash is killing Rubnel and is like, bond me, I know you want Relaine, but he's really far away. And, you know, Sibling's like, you're not worthy, actually. So I'm not going to do that. And then we actually cut to R'Laine, who comes across the remnants of the PvP battle, and they start making a triage for everybody. The Parshendi, the humans, everyone who fought, they're giving him a triage, and he goes to mourn the death of Teft. When he seems that there's arguments breaking out amongst the living Parshendi and the living humans, he goes, hey, I'm Parshendi, but I've been living with humans. Let me be the bridge for your conflict. See, because he was in... Okay. And they decide that they need to get everybody to the Oath Gates as quickly as possible. And if you've noticed, cleverly, with all the civilians coming to watch the Kaladin fight, and we see earlier, like, the shopkeeper and his son who went to just go take care of the Radiants, this is like a low-key evacuation that's actually going to be pretty darn thorough of everyone going to the Oath Gates without there having to be like a direct... we're evacuating kind of thing. It works. Now at chapter 110, we cut back to Kaladin, who manages to swoop down in time and grab his father. And there's like this ha-ha moment between them because Kaladin's like shard plate is formed around him. He's all badass looking. You didn't have to do it the last minute. And I know it's supposed to be a good father-son thing, but Lirin has done so much to piss me off this book that in this moment, shut up. I don't know why, but that's just my reaction to that. And he notices that Kaladin's forehead glyph is flaking off. From here, we cut to Navani, who has successfully pushed Moash away with science because she's doing all this humming inside of the crystal pillar now that she is touching, and communicating with Sibling. And because she sciences so hard, she proves herself to be worthy of Sibling after all, and Sibling bonds her. That's right, I did a misdirect earlier when I said about R'Laine, and so did the book. And in fact, it actually does bond Navani. Here, we cut back to Dalinar, and he's about to meet with Ishar the Herald, who seems to be a little bit not right in the head. Damn it, that's the Parshendi, and I keep forgetting that. And Ishar attacks Dalinar and his people, easily handling some of his guys, but Szeth realizes that the blade he's using used to belong to his papa. Anyway, Dalinar tries to open a perpendicularity to talk to Ishar, but there's no good, and Ishar starts to try and sever the connection between Dalinar and the Stormfather, but Szeth steps in with Nightblood and is able to stop the perpendicularity, and then he starts fighting Ishar, and he chips his honor blade with Nightblood. What the fuck is Nightblood? There's a moment of sanity that happens to Ishar where he tells Dalinar, through Sibling and through something else. I think it even happens because Sibling bonds someone. He needs to restore his sanity so he can fight with Dalinar. But I'm confused by that, to be perfectly honest. After the battle's over there, they search Ishar's stuff, and they find out he's been doing a bunch of experiments on these weird bodies that are Spren? That shouldn't be here. Anyway, we cut to R'Laine, who is bonding Toomey, another Spren who's been in the background of this story. So he does end up bonding someone, as there's a bunch of evil people about to attack the party of essentially just civilians are trying to get out of there. They're going full mustache evil here. Navani is working with Sibling to reactivate the tower, and she tells Kaladin, yo, these people where R'Laine is and everybody, they're about to get got. You need to get up there and save them. Doing it, on it. And then we cut to the perspective of Adolin, the young boy from the interlude before, and he is actually saved by Kaladin's arrival, and we see the security system of the tower turn on. That's right, they remembered the code to their Simply Safe. Sponsor me! And now the day is saved. So we cut to Moash, who is running from the tower, and his emotions are resurging. He feels the worst, and he ends up falling into the ground, eventually found by some fused and brought further from the tower so that Odium can both numb him and realize that, dude, you're blind. Moash is blinded now. So, it's a little bit, yeah, you deserve that. It's not enough. It's not nearly enough, to be clear, but it's a start, Sanderson. I want 6 chapters of Moash getting just... In 1-1-2, we start with Dalinar as he hears of the tower's victory and is like, dope. And I helped. Not really, but like a little. Anyway, he goes to his tent and realizes that Odium is transported to talk. And he offers a treaty, a truce to Odium, but Odium sees that within it is Wit's doing, and no way in hell is he going to be signing anything that Wit put together, because, like, no. He's also definitely afraid. Like, Dalinar senses that, and Dalinar has been told by Wit, like, you cannot agree to anything that will let Odium leave the system. So that just is off the table. And they agree, all right, there's going to be a battle of champions in 10 days. And Odium, even if he wins, doesn't get to leave the system. He just gets to keep the land that he's taken so far, but he also gets the Dalinar. And if he loses, he gets nothing, and he got to get his ass out of here, but not out of the system. Clear. Anyway, now moving on to chapter 113, we start with Navani, who mercy kills Rabanel, which means I do not have to say that name anymore. That continually trips me up. And the reason she does this is because so much of her soul has been burned away that if she reincarnates, she will be like her daughter that she had to kill, which, Sanderson's such a lighthearted writer, guys, not grimdark at all. But from here, we cut to Taravangian, who's having the dumbest day yet. Or is he? He is, but that's because Szeth ends up coming to see him right when Odium decides to arrive. And Taravangian gets exactly what he wants, because as Szeth says, I'm going to kill you, he slices into his body, which I think, if I'm reading this right, allows Taravangian to use Nightblood to then kill Odium. And as his physical body dies, his mind becomes the entity that was Odium with all of its powers. So you know how in The Boys, there's that super smart character in the last season, and at the end it's that was my plan the whole time, and they kept making themselves dumber? I kept thinking about Taravangian watching that the entire time watching The Boys. And I want to know if they saw this the dumb day thing, and she kept making herself dumb. It just felt very 1-to-1. This was a better execution, though both okay. Oh, well, that one was still good, but this was great, in my opinion. This is going to take us to chapter 114, where we start with R'hllane. And he is with the Parshendi that are needing to leave. We can offer you, refuge. No, we need to go find those new listeners that we talked about earlier, and then it is time for Teft's funeral. It's very beautiful. His body is soul cast. All of the Bridge 4 people are there. They slowly leave to go to taverns, and Kaladin stays. He's the last one, and he's had it rough. He's had it very rough. But then we cut to Taravangian in this chapter, testing his new powers, seeing his new limits. I can see the future. That's cool. But Cultivation then comes and agrees to help him learn the ways. But still, Taravangian's I'm going to find a way to beat Dalinar and save them all, which... See, there's this thing in the Cosmere where there's the on-the-ground planet confrontations, right? And then there are the larger, bigger fights that are happening inter-Cosmere. And we even see this hinted at when Dalinar is meeting with Taravangian before, because Taravangian says, I want you all to fight for me in, the Cosmerian level. And Dalinar's you don't get Roshar to be your fighters. Once you kind of look and put these two pieces of information together, what's a brewin'? Chapter 115, we see Shallan, after all the happy ending in Shadesmar, gets on the horn with Mrzrain and is bruv, I don't need the Ghostbloods, sorry. And they're dude, I'll kill your family. We got all this knowledge. Please, are you sure? And Shallan's I'm good. I got Veil in me and stuff. Yeah, but those other worlds are super rad. Anyway, bye. And then we cut to Venli, who is meeting up with those listeners we talked about. Her mom is there. She sings to her mom. It's a beautiful moment. And she swears the second ideal. Dope. Parshendi Ascension. Then we're in chapter 116, the second to last, and Kaladin is thanking Dalinar for relieving him of duty, and he's man, don't apologize. It's what I needed. It was the right call. You're a great leader, and it's just wholesome moments all around. Dalinar then gives him Wit's flute that was found in a trash can, more on that in a second, and asks him to help with dealing with Ishar, though not as the champion yet. Then Kaladin goes to where Wit's flute was found and finds some belongings that belong to Rock and Sigzil, but he also finds a wooden horse. Yeah. And he keeps his promise to Teft, and the last Kaladin bit ends with him going to group therapy. And then we cut to Dalinar, who's talking with Navani, and was like, I should have known you could handle the tower. And I'm like, that's true. She could, but my guy. Anyway, he talks with Stormfather, and Stormfather's like, just so you know, in the past, I have shown mercy. But you said that you're a storm and you must rage. It's nice, though. It's a good moment. Let it happen. Chapter 117, we follow Ashone as she is finishing her battle with Adolin and falling into that chasm we saw before in the flashback, and she's trying desperately to climb on out, but a flood comes and washes her further down. She's fighting for her life so brutally hard. She's actually making like discoveries that are echoing what Venli does within this book as well, though obviously not as extreme. And it's as she's finally passing, giving up, that the Stormfather shows her mercy and actually tells her that her life was well lived, and even takes her up in a high storm and shows her the world before letting her pass on. The Stormfather's mercy is real. And this takes us to the epilogue, which of course is a Hoid epilogue, or as he's been referred to throughout this, Wit. And naturally he has an encounter with Odium, but Wit being Wit, he's able to tell, that's not Odium.
Odium.
He realizes that and attacks him, erases some of his memories, which technically doesn't break contract with Dalinar. And Hoid then isn't able to do perfect pitch because his mind got screwed with too hard. Uh-oh. And then in amazing timing, possibly the best in my entire career. My voice just cracked. Can you tell I've been talking for too long? As I was literally writing this portion on the board, hence why it's in the same color, my mod on Discord, Potato, messaged me and let me know there has been a retcon within Rhythm of War I want to make you all aware of. At the end of the book, originally, it's described that Lift finds a red chicken. I think its name is like Aviaire or something like that. That has now been changed to Lift is asking after the red chicken. So that's how we're ending this. On this go-through of Rhythm of War, I'm going to rate it a very solid 7 out of 10, and I could easily see it being higher for others, or lower if you're bothered by some of the things that bothered me, like too much time spent in the tower. It's a lot happening, and also the pacing of it feels weird for how much is happening. But anyway, definitely a great time doing this. It feels like I've just run a marathon. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And have a good one, y'all. Pick up some merch over at danielbgreen.com. All of our favorites are there. Peace.